Part 78. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 801. Facing Su Tong's silent provocation, the eyes under the mask were already as red as blood. As a Northern Yin demon rider, he once had the feat of slaying gods with 18 riders. Now that he is forced to this point by a mortal who has entered the Taoist realm, this is not only his own shame, but if word spreads, it will bring shame to the reputation of the demon rider. Thinking of this, the eyes under the mask calmed down. There were no more emotional fluctuations in his eyes. He swept the spear in his hand on the ground and wrote a line of words, "You can state your name." Seeing that the other party calmed down, Su Tong suddenly became alert. He cupped his hands and said with a heroic expression, "I won't change my name, but I won't change my surname. I am Zhang Heis Hung." The other party nodded and swiped the spear in his hand. "Do you dare to fight? If you don't ride, I'll fight." Su Tong pointed to the war horse under this guy's crotch and said seriously. After this guy mounted the war horse, his strength was so abnormal that he could block time by charging. If he hadn't had wrestling skills, he would have had no choice but to wait for death. War. After hearing Su Tong's words, the other party did not hesitate at all. He really jumped off the horse and reached out to pat his mount. He walked toward Su Tong with a spear in hand. Seeing this, Su Tong raised his eyebrows slightly. This time, he did not choose to run away. Instead, he summoned the pure yang sword and strode forward to meet him. Seeing that Su Tong really didn't escape this time, the eyes under the mask gradually began to show murderous intent. "Boss, are you ready for a group fight?" Gao Zhou and others hid in the distance and watched, and they couldn't wait to see what happened. According to Su Tong's plan, after bringing this guy in, he would use the power of this bloody forest to continuously consume this guy's physical strength until his strength was exhausted, and everyone would kill him together. Judging from the appearance of this guy at this moment, he should be almost exhausted. This is a good opportunity for them to take action. "No, please wait, I want to do it myself." Su Tong responded in the team channel. He could feel that the black armored warrior in front of him had very little power left. But even so, it will still bring unprecedented pressure to himself, but it is this kind of pressure that makes Su Tong inevitably eager to try, not only to verify his strength, but also to prove that he can put aside the suppression of the realm. Whether he is qualified to compete with the other party. The two eyes met, and in an instant, the black armored warrior suddenly accelerated his pace, and the spear in his hand drew a beautiful arc, with a faint black wind flowing in the arc. Seeing this, Su Tong raised his Chunyang sword and stabbed him. Peng, there was a low impact. Immediately afterwards there was a continuous sound of peng. Peng. Every time Su Tong thrust out his sword, there was a cold light, and the hot pure yang sword energy burst out one after another. The combination of the pure yang sword and the pure yang body makes the sword clank. Even without releasing any skills, just with a set of Tai Chi sword technique, the sword energy is as strong as the forest, seemingly fast and sometimes slow. In conjunction with the pure yang, the sword code has a rather immortal demeanor. Tou's swordsmanship looks more and more like that. Gao Zhou and others hid in the distance and watching Su Tong's sword skills becoming more and more fierce, and not only secretly applauded. In fact, this is also a natural thing. Putting aside the basic sword skill Tai Chi sword technique, pure yang sword has the add one characteristic of sword skills, plus sword weapon, transferring martial arts and the title retrograde sequence. Second bond, all skills add one. Su Tong's swordsmanship is naturally improving rapidly. Not only is the progress rapid, but he is also constantly improving in the battle. The more you fight, the braver you become. The black armored warrior realized that Su Tong was using himself as a whetstone, and there was a hint of anger in his eyes. The spear in his hand was like a dragon swimming out of the water, grabbing the gap where the sword edge flashed back, and suddenly thrust forward. His right arm was so strong that his clothes bulged, and the right hand holding the spear suddenly exerted force. Buzz! Suddenly the spear tip spun instantly. A terrifying tearing storm suddenly rolled up from the spear, tearing apart the void in a terrifying moment. Su Tong didn't expect that the spear in the opponent's hand was so terrifying. Seeing that he couldn't dodge, he simply stopped dodging and let out a long roar, no longer retaining his strength. Venerable title skill Dragon Elephant Sutra was activated by Su Tong. It consumes 40 script points. After activation, you can obtain the power of Dragon Elephant. For a moment, the image of the Dragon Elephant appeared behind him, and he was blessed by the power of the Dragon Elephant. White dragon scales appeared on the body, and the figure seemed to turn into a white dragon, swinging the pure yang sword in his hand to strike with all his strength. No matter how many changes you make, I can break them all with my single strength. Su Tong's eyes were blazing, and the pure yang sword in his hand gradually converged. The sword seemed to be an ordinary slash, but it made the space in front of him seem to be deformed by huge pressure. Chiang, there was an explosion, and the surrounding trees suddenly exploded. The terrible collision storm actually caused the surrounding ground to collapse and explode. Just when the strong wind blew, a rapid whistling sound was heard in the sky, whoosh whoosh, and then a cold light flashed, falling straight from the sky and stuck on a broken tree. If you look carefully, you can see that it is the half of the spear. Cough cough cough. Under the broken tree in front of him, Su Tong held his chest and looked at the hole in his chest. He couldn't help but secretly thought that it was so dangerous, just a little bit close to piercing his heart. He raised his head and saw the black-armored warrior standing there, staring blankly at the broken spear in his hand, his eyes becoming complicated for a moment. Head. Seeing that the winner was decided, Gao Zhou and others immediately rushed out from the side. Lilith hurriedly checked Su Tong's chest. After seeing the bloody wound, she not only frowned and said, "Why not use a magic spell?" The magic spell in Lilith's mouth is the mark left on Su Tong's heart. Once activated, he can temporarily gain the blessing of part of Lilith's godhead. Su Tong waved his hand and said with a smile on his face, "I won't do the anti-aircraft cannon to kill mosquitoes. Didn't I win?" As he said that, he looked up at the black-armored warrior in front of him and raised his chin. "I win. You didn't give me a chance just now, but now I'll give you a chance. Get out." "Boss, you're crazy. Look at this guy's fingers trembling. He's clearly at the end of his strength. It's taboo to let the tiger go back to the mountain at this time." Gao Zhou said in the team channel. "Yes, if you can't do it, I can do it for you." Chang Wuhen took out the dagger that had just been forcibly taken away from the props book, with a murderous look in his eyes. "Don't be stupid, you two. Let this guy leave quickly. If he doesn't leave, we may all be in trouble." Su Tong rolled his eyes at these two guys. He was injured now, blood was flowing out, and the effect of resentful water ointment on his body was beginning to be greatly reduced. Chi Men opened his life eye and looked around, and sure enough he saw strands of invisible red threads twisting towards him. If that was all, forget it. As soon as the fate icon opened, Su Tong suddenly noticed that the luck above his head was declining rapidly without knowing when. Not only his own luck, but also Gao Zhou and Chang Wuju's. In this way, they obviously took calendula and their luck improved a lot, otherwise Su Tong would not have dared to let one of them steal the dagger and the other the bow and arrow just now. But now their luck has dropped to a great extent, which is not a good sign. After hearing this, Gao Zhou and Chang Wugu looked at each other, put down their hands, and pretended to be relaxed. "Since our boss has spoken, do you want to leave by yourself, or let us send you away?" The black-armored warrior's eyes widened and he was always staring at the pure yang sword in Su Tong's hand, his eyes full of unwillingness. Although Su Tong intended to bully others by relying on the power of the artifact, this was not an excuse for his failure. Thinking of this, The black-armored warrior raised half of the spear in his hand, waved it on the ground a few times, and left a line of writing, "I am not as good as others, I have nothing to say, I will give this to you, I will come to get it someday." With that said, he threw a sign to Su Tong. Su Tong took it and threw it into the prop book. Northern Yin Demon Riding Order. Holding this order can ignore many rules of the underworld and freely enter the gate of the underworld. Note, behead first and then report, the Emperor has given permission. Seeing this token, Su Tong's eyes lit up. He was still worried about how to break out of the underworld, but this thing came in time. "Thank you, brother." Su Tong grinned, this business was indeed a profit. The black-armored warrior frowned, obviously disgusted with the smile on Su Tong's face. He got on his horse and was about to turn around and leave. But suddenly, for no apparent reason, I heard a burst of horse laughter. The demonic cavalry under the Emperor Bian fell into the hands of a young boy. The reputation of the 18 cavalry for slaughtering gods has been lost in this generation. Hearing this familiar voice, Su Tong thought something bad in his heart. He finally understood why their luck suddenly dropped so fast, and thought to himself, this old lady is still chasing me. I saw the white mist in the forest dispersing, and a big green cow was carrying an old lady walking step by step. Following closely behind were Zhou and others. I saw Zhou riding the Spark-class leopard colt, slowly stepping forward, and then severely lashed the black-armored warrior in front of him in the face with his long whip. "Idiot, Fengdu has been completely embarrassed by you." When the black-armored warrior saw this, instead of daring to resist, he quickly jumped off his horse, knelt on the ground, and saluted Zhou and others. But when Zhou and others saw this, they became even more angry. The whip in his hand hit the sky hard, and while lashing, he cursed, "Idiot, what an idiot. A waste like you shouldn't become a Northern Yin demon cavalry at all. When I go back, I will send you to Fengdu prison." What a bastard. Gao Zhou and others were angry when they saw Zhou, and now they felt even more unhappy when they saw him beating the black-armored warrior like this. Although they had a hard time dealing with this demon cavalry, they almost killed their powerful enemy, and they felt very happy after winning the battle. But when Zhou did this, he instantly felt like he was being downgraded, and most of the joy in his heart disappeared in an instant. Po Meng sat on the back of the big green ox and looked at Su Tong. "I am also proficient in the art of divination, and I just gave you a divination. This divination is not good. At this moment, in this mountain and here, it is you. Burial place, if you don't believe it, look, the luck on top of your head is about to burn out." When Ms Meng raised her hand and pointed, Su Tong instinctively wanted to look up, but his only trace of reason immediately stopped him. Today's Su Tong is no longer the kind of young boy who just entered the world. He knew very well that the closer it got to this time, the less likely he was to go and see it. Po Meng's words were a prophecy. Seeing that Su Tong couldn't bear to look, Meng Po was not only slightly surprised, but also a little impatient with Su Tong's impression in her heart. Her voice suddenly turned cold. "Whether you believe it or not, I am going to do it today. Your soul is in disarray." Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 802. A suffocating black aura spread from Po Meng's body. The surrounding blood redwoods quickly withered the moment they came into contact with this aura, and the ancient trees in the sky were robbed of their vitality in an instant. "Run!" Su Tong's pupils tightened. He grabbed Lilith's arm and ran back. Chang Wugu and Gao Zhou even separated to the left and right and rushed in the other direction. Facing the righteous god of the underworld like Meng Po, the gap is so big that it can no longer be changed with any other elements. One can escape one by one without even thinking about counterattack. Hey, it's not that easy to run away. None of you can run away today. Zhou looked around and knew that he was no match for Su Tong and Lilith. Moreover, Grandma Meng didn't seem to want them to interfere, so he simply patted his brother Xia Yan on the shoulder. "Brothers, the hunting has begun." After that, the 5 brothers split into 2 groups. Zhou Mu led one of his brothers and chased Gao Zhou. Xia Yan, on the other hand, led 2 other brothers to hunt down Xiang Chang Liuzhu. Sha. 2 figures in the bushes ran forward one after another, and Su Tong looked behind him from time to time. There was no sign of Po Meng, and it seemed that she was not chasing her. But one after another, the blood trees were quickly withering at the pace of the 2 of them. "Child, why are you running away? I still liked your high-spirited days in Dokeng." Po Meng's voice would appear in Su Tong's ears from time to time, as if she was beside him. "Bah, I didn't know you were so shameless." Su Tong spat and cursed. Facing Su Tong's curse, Meng Po was not angry at all. She rode on the back of the big green ox and followed Su Tong slowly. Po Meng had thought clearly on the way here that it was almost impossible for this kind of native soul to appear again. Unless this kid's parents were native souls, it would be even more incredible. If this is really the case, then this kid's parents are either ancient gods, or there is another possibility, this kid's parents are the gods of death. But if it is an ancient god, then this boy must have the mark of the god on his body. But he didn't notice it. Therefore, it is more likely that this boy's parents may be the god of death. Reminiscing about the fact that one of the dead gods who escaped from the underworld many years ago seemed to be pregnant, Po Meng felt more and more that the latter was more likely. If he is really the descendant of the god of death, then it would be even more interesting. Maybe this kid is the key to unlocking the mystery of the god of death. This is what Meng Po really wants. However, she was not in a hurry to take action, because Su Tong's luck had not yet reached rock bottom, but it was not much different. As long as he continued to move forward, his luck would deteriorate faster the further he went. Riding on the big green ox, Meng Po's eyes seemed to see through the future. Withered blood trees appeared in her turbid eyes. Large tracts of trees were completely withered, and bright red leaves fell down. Su Tong was like he fell into the blood-red leaves, his chest was cut open, and there was no more life left. "Ha ha ha ha, run, keep running." The wild laughter on the other side echoed in the forest, and 2 lights and shadows like sparks were seen rushing through the forest. Zhou Mu waved his riding whip and aimed it at Gao Zhou, who was performing the earth escape technique. The long whip exploded like a dragon, cracking the ground in front of him, and a soft force was transmitted to the earth, making Gao Zhou feel as if he had been hit by an old fist all over his body, even though he had the body of a yaksha, and grimaced in pain. "Don't come out yet." Seeing that Gao Zhou still refused to come out, Zhou Mu kept swinging the long whip in his hand, one whip after another. With each blow, the soft power of the whip spread to the earth, causing the soil in front of him to crack. "Son of a bitch." Gao Zhou endured the severe pain and cursed secretly. He suddenly noticed the dense tree stems in the soil in front of him. His heart suddenly moved and he rushed towards the place where these tree stems were densely packed. As soon as I burrowed inside, I felt that once the force of the horsewhip hitting the ground touched these tree stems, most of the force was immediately absorbed. This discovery made Gao Zhou secretly happy, and he simply continued to rush inside. Huh! When Zhou Mu, who was riding on Ban Bao's colt, saw this, Gao Zhou's aura seemed to disappear in front of him, and he suddenly became very angry. "You want to run, can you run?" As he spoke, Zhou Mu patted the brocade pouch on his waist, and saw 6 small flags flying out of the brocade pouch. Each of these 6 flags had a different color, with the names Zhou, Xia, Xiao, and Wu on them respectively. Sun, 6 characters. These 6 characters respectively correspond to the names of the 6 palace owners of Fengdu Ocean Palace. Zhou Mu made a gesture with his fingers, and suddenly 6 small flags fluttered without wind, turning into 6 strange lights and leaping into the sky. Then under Zhou Mu's control, the 6 flags waved, and for a moment there was lightning and thunder and fire, and a burst of light. A strange dark wind came, blowing the woods in front of them into ashes in an instant. I want you to hide. Today I will turn you into scum. Zhou had a sinister smile on his face, and Wu Ju on the side showed some worry when he saw this, and reminded him in a low voice, "Brother, this is not good, this is Dozai Mountain after all. What the heck are you afraid of? I didn't set fire to the mountain and destroy this forest. How can to convict our brothers? The worst is to go to the old man and file a complaint against us." The old man Zhou spoke of was naturally the great Emperor Fengdu of Bian. They are confident because of the care of this old man. Even if they cause any trouble, they can continue to dissipate with just a word from the old man. After listening to Zhou's words, Wu Ju felt that he was right. When even joining in, together with Zhou, he controlled the 6 small flags. As the 6 small flags twisted, one after another, the sky fire fell and hit the ground in front of them. Now Gaozhou, who was hiding in the soil, was miserable. The soaring high temperature around him made him feel like he was in a furnace. It's over, it's over. Just when Gaozhou felt that he was certain to die this time, a tree stem suddenly poked out from the soil, grabbed Gaozhou's ankle, pulled hard, and pulled Gaozhou deep into the soil. When Gaozhou came to his senses, he realized that he had been pulled into a huge cave. Surrounded by dense vines, these vines extend in all directions along the gaps in the cave, leading to nowhere. But the source of these roots and stems all converge on this weird big tree in front of them. Gaozhou stepped forward and took a closer look, and saw that the big tree was actually densely packed with faces of men and women. The old monster with 1,000 faces. Gaozhou remembered what King Blackwater had said before, his heart moved, and he suddenly became alert. Kaka kaka. The tree body was seen shaking slightly, and the face on the bark twisted year by year, turning into a huge face. The face has no eyes, and the empty eye sockets stare at Gaozhou. His mouth twists and makes a harsh voice, "Help me, I don't want to die." Hearing this, Gaozhou was startled, stretched out his hand and scratched his head, "Shall I help you? I don't want to die." The 1,000-faced old monster roared again. He also suffered from bad luck for 8 lifetimes. When someone sits at home, misfortune comes from heaven. Who did you offend by staying here? As a result, each of the lords who came was more terrifying than the last. He was called the 1,000-faced monster by King Blackwater, precisely because he had these blood trees as his avatar, and he could sense any corner at will. Even if 1 or 2 blood trees are destroyed, there is no need to worry. But now, it's not just 1 or 2 that have been destroyed. Not to mention Zhou and others, the most terrifying thing was Po Meng, who corroded everything along the way and withered large areas of bloodwood, which almost killed him. If they continue to struggle, they may be unable to hold on even before Su Tong and others are finished. How can I help you? I can't protect myself now. Gaozhou spread his palms, looking helpless. As soon as he said these words, he suddenly felt a tightness in his ankle. Looking down, he saw tree roots suddenly wrapped around his body. "Help!" The 1,000-faced old monster whispered, and more tree vines began to wrap around him. How do you want me to help you?" Gaozhou wanted to struggle, but it was too late. He could only watch helplessly as the vines tried to wrap him into a rice dumpling. "Take me away and use your body to make soil for me." As the 1,000-faced old monster said, he pulled Gaozhou closer to him. The thick tree trunk began to twist and tear, and bright red buds emerged from the tree. He didn't have much time left. Po Meng would not consider his life or death at all. She was even worse than an ant in front of Po Meng. If you want to survive, you must escape, but it is just a tree after all, and its body cannot move at all, let alone like the plum fairy, who can move its body at will. So the 1,000-faced old monster came up with a way to use Gaozhou's body as soil, parasitize himself on his body, turn it into his own puppet and take him away from here. This is like pulling himself out of the soil, as in a moving flower pot. This method was not a temporary idea of the thousand-faced monster, but a method that had been thought of a long time ago. But this is the land of the underworld. Although he is rooted not far from the gate of hell, all the people coming in from the gate of hell are ghosts. How can there be any flesh and blood that can be used as his flower pot? Who would have thought that there is no end to the road, and when one's life or death is at stake, a flower pot will come to his door? How could the thousand-faced monster let go of this opportunity? Fresh flesh and blood. The granulation sprouts poked out one after another, and the sharp barbs on them were as sharp knives, piercing into Gao's flesh and blood without any hindrance, then piercing the muscle layer and piercing the blood vessels and arteries. Feeling the vigorous life breath on Gao's body, the thousand-faced old monster almost screamed with excitement. It's been thousands of years, and no living person has ever appeared here. He can only absorb the ghosts that break into this place. But now that fresh flesh and blood was in front of it, it couldn't help but tremble with excitement. The roots greedily devoured the blood on Gao's body. It had never tasted the taste of human blood. This was simply the most delicious taste in the world. Gao was still struggling at first, but when he saw this guy sucking his own blood, his expression gradually became weird, so he simply stopped struggling and frowned as he watched this guy suck his blood vigorously. You agreed? Sensing that Gao was no longer struggling, the thousand-faced monster was quite happy, thinking that Gao was overthinking it. Gao remained silent when he heard this, and just nodded weakly. This time the thousand-faced monster was even more rude, and more shoots began to burrow into Gao's flesh and blood. Don't worry, I won't erase your will. Take me with you and I can give you more power. These sprouts quickly pierced Gao's flesh and blood, even crushing the bones in Gao's body, and then reweaved new bones for him. This process was naturally worse than death. But Gao didn't feel any pain at all, and just watched the thousand-faced monster's every move with cold eyes. Time passed by minute. When he realized that Gao had become his perfect flower pot, the thousand-faced monster finally stopped his movements and let out a harsh, sinister laugh. I lied to you, you should leave such a good body to my control. As he spoke, wisps of red light were injected into Gao's body along the buds. However, instead of showing any sign of anger, Gao stared coldly at the thousand-faced monster in front of him. It wasn't until the thousand-faced monster felt that something was wrong that he heard Gao slowly say, "How dare you drink zombie blood like this, you are the bravest person I have ever seen." Zombie blood. The thousand-faced monster was startled, and sure enough, he quickly discovered that the fleshy sprouts connected to Gao's body gradually began to turn black. A drop of zombie blood creates a 1,000-year poison. Old man, you are considered lucky. A ferocious smile appeared on Gao's face, and his originally rosy face gradually began to turn white, revealing Yaksha's true face. Ah! The thousand-faced monster screamed instantly, frantically trying to cut off the roots connected to Gaudra's body. How broken is the thousand-faced monster's heart at this moment? It's like Zhang San dragged Li Si into the cornfield and wanted to forcefully have sex with Li Si. In the end, Li Si didn't struggle and let Zhang San succeed. But little did they know that when Zhang San was already on the highway, Li Si suddenly said, "I have AIDS." Now you know how scared Zhang San feels. The thousand-faced monster was as frightened as Zhang San at the moment. Unfortunately, Zhang San might still be saved, but the thousand-faced monster was not so lucky. The corpse poison suddenly erupted and began to bite the thousand-faced monster in an instant. Not only did the thousand-faced monster become unable to move for a while, but even the tree roots wrapped around Gao began to break one after another. Suddenly, the large piece of bloodwood outside began to wither, and Gao opened his mouth and revealed his fangs. "Fool, it's my turn now." As he spoke, Gao Zhou pounced forward, broke free from the restraints on his body, and began to crazily absorb the essence of the thousand-faced monster from the thousand-faced monster's body. Gao Zhou was a blessing in disguise at the same time. Chang Wuhen was in a desperate situation. Even though he had the ability to travel through space, the speed of Ban Baoju under Xia Yan's 3 seats was too fast. This kind of mount, one of the best in the underworld, has the same status as a sweaty horse in reality. When it runs, sparks flicker and it is as fast as lightning. Each time he moved, he could only get away from Xia Yan and the others for a moment, and then they were quickly caught up. "Hey, you still want to run?" Seeing this, Xia Yan's 3 brothers took out their magic weapons one after another. Xia Yan summoned a pink skull and tossed it casually, and the skull immediately flew into the air. Come on," the pink skeleton made a lustful sound, and Chang Wuju felt a numbness all over his body, as if there were countless soft little hands playing with his body. For a moment, there was a blur in front of my eyes, as if I had fallen into countless tender lands, and I stood there motionless for a moment. Ha 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 ha. The 3 Xia Yan brothers came on horseback and circled around Chang Wenzhen. Seeing the nymphomaniac look on the boy's face, they immediately laughed at each other. Xia Yan proudly introduced his treasure to the other 2 brothers. It is said that a hero has a hard time being a beauty. This pink skeleton of mine is a treasure made from the souls of 81 sluts. No matter how much you resist, you will only sink deeper and deeper. Hey, that doesn't give him an advantage. If you want me to chop off this guy's head, pull out his soul, and let him fly away. As Laolia Sunfu spoke, he raised the ghost-headed sword in his hand, preparing to chop Chang Wuhen with one strike. Oh, wait a minute. Seeing this, Xia Yan immediately stopped his brother, jumped off the horse, looked around Chang Wugu, with a wicked smile on his face. Killing him like this will give him an advantage. We brothers are here. The suffering you endured on Yushan must be repaid twice as much. As soon as Xia Yan said these words, the other 2 brothers couldn't help but think of the pain of all their brothers that night at Qinli Pavilion in Yushan Mountain, and they couldn't help but feel sad and angry. "Third brother, what do you think we should do?" The 2 brothers looked at Xia Yan, and saw Xia Yan walking up to Chang Wugu, showing a bit of a sinister smile. "Hey, Jian, after I knock out his soul and change his soul seal destiny, I want him to you will be reincarnated as a prostitute and a maid from generation to generation, and you will not die a good death." When the 2 brothers heard this, they thought it was a good idea. One of them also sighed, "Hey, reincarnation, I don't know how many good deeds and merits you have to do to enter it. Otherwise, you can only wait in the city of feudal death, and wait until the day when your opportunity comes before you can enter reincarnation. I think this don't say you're in vain, boy. I think he can't even miss one of the 18 levels of hell. If we do this, he's a blessing in disguise, ha 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 ha." The 3 of them laughed wildly, and Xia Yan was laughing from ear to ear. But inadvertently, he glanced at Chang Wuhen. Suddenly Xia Yan was stunned, but he saw Chang Wuxiu staring at him with clear eyes. For a moment, Xia Yan thought he was dazzled, but the next second, Chang Wuhen suddenly took action. The dagger originally owned by the black-armored warrior appeared in his hand, and struck Xia Yan like lightning. This sword caught Xia Yan completely off guard. He didn't even have time to dodge, and a bloody flower was instantly struck on his chest. Ah! Immediately afterwards, Chang Wuhen flew towards Xia Yan, stabbed the dagger directly into Xia Yan's abdomen, and at the same time grabbed Xia Yan's throat with one hand. "If you don't want me to disembowel him, don't move." The whole process was astonishingly fast, and even Xia Yan himself only came to his senses when Chang Wuxiu's fingers pinched his throat. Looking at the dagger stuck in his abdomen, he was completely confused. Are you okay? His pink skull is a magic weapon that cannot be spared even by the ghosts and ghosts of the underworld. This mortal is not an expert, so how could he resist the temptation of the red and pink skull? Chang Wuhan squinted his eyelids, glanced at the skull still floating above his head, and sneered, "Just this thing, you still want to confuse me? What nonsense! Don't do it." Now the faces of the other two brothers became nervous. The two of them looked at the dagger in Chang Wogu's hand. It was absolutely impossible to kill Xia Yan with Chang Wogu's mortal body. But this short sword happened to fall into Chang Wogu's hand. This is the standard dagger of the Northern Yin Demon Cavalry. It is forged with the divine iron from the foot of Fengdu Mountain. It is a divine weapon that can truly kill gods. Otherwise, even if Chang Wuju were caught by surprise, he would not be able to control it so easily. Live in Xiaoyan. Hey! Seeing the two brothers throwing the rat weapon, Chang Wuji raised the corners of his lips, jumped on the Xingguo class leopard colt with Xia Yan in hand. "Get away, or I will take him and bury him with me." After hearing this, the two brothers could only keep retreating, telling Chang Wuhan not to be impulsive. "Brother, you are still young and can live for another 180 years. You must not take the wrong path." The two of them retreated, hoping that Chang Wuzi would put Xia Yan down. "Think clearly, I am the son of the divine master of Taisha Liangshi sect Tiangong. If you kill me, my father will definitely make you unable to survive and unable to survive." Xia Yan's whole body was tense, fearing that Chang Wogu would really use the sword to cut him apart. "In this way, if you let me go, I will ensure that you can return to the world smoothly. You go your way, and I will go mine the Nahi bridge. Let's not offend the river." Hearing this, Chang Wuhan did not respond. He just held the hilt of the sword with one hand and pulled up the reins with the other. He ignored Xia Yan's words and kicked the horse in the belly. "Drive." Immediately, Ban Baoja changed its direction and rushed into the depths of the woods. "You are crazy. Don't think that if you threaten me, Grandma Meng will let you go. There is something wrong with that kid, and Grandma Meng will definitely not let him go. You are looking for death." Sensing Chang Wuhan's thoughts, Xia Yan suddenly screamed. When they came, they heard Mrs. Meng once said that there might be a big problem with Su Tong, and they must get to the bottom of it. Although Meng Po didn't tell them what the problem was. It is conceivable that it is not a trivial matter for this Grandma Meng to be so aggressive. And Xia Yan knew even more clearly that although Grandma Meng was not a big shot in the underworld, she was someone that no one dared to offend easily. It was said that she had an empress to back her up. Even if he takes himself as a hostage, if this Grandma Meng does not agree, even if Chang Wuhan kills her, his father will not dare to offend Mrs. Meng. Thinking of this, Xia Yan had to analyze Chang Wuzi again and again, and persuaded him with sincerity. "You finally ran out. Why did you run back? Even if you kill me, you will still be unable to escape. It's not worth it." Chang Wuhan kicked Ban Baoju in the crotch, signaling Ban Baoju to speed up. Faced with Xia Yan's dissuasion, Chang Wuhan seemed to feel something, raised his head, and said to himself, "It's not worth it." But then I don't know what this guy thought of, and the corners of his mouth unconsciously raised, grinning, "But who made him my brother?" You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 803. In front of the gate of Yushan Palace, the wind and snow blew like blades on the guard's dumb face. Buzz. At this time, the closed palace door shook slightly and was slowly pushed open. The moment the gate opened, a carriage was seen being pulled by 8 divine horses, rushing out of the gate and speeding towards the east. If you look closely, you can easily identify it as Shen Tu's carriage. Immediately afterwards, the second, third, and fourth carriages came out of the palace gate, and without exception, they all headed towards the east. Then I saw a few slow carriages, walking side by side from the palace gate. I couldn't see the figures in the carriages, But I could hear the ridicule coming from these carriages. Ha ha ha, Shentu is going to be angry now. Hey, I didn't plan to rob it in the first place. Instead, my family was unlucky. If it were me, I wouldn't be happy either. It's just that this old ghost dude can still keep his composure, which really surprises me. Humph, his calculations are so good, how could he do a loss-making business? Don't look at how calm he is in front of the emperor. Just look at him rushing east in a hurry just now. You can tell that he is more anxious than anyone else. Ha ha ha, it depends on how he seizes the food from the tiger's mouth. Several carriages slowly rushed to the sky and left each other. No one went to the east again. But no one knew that while they were still sitting firmly on the fishing platform, someone had already sprinkled the bait earlier than them. Emperor, everyone is gone. At the top of the secluded mountain, the old man who gave Su Tong pine nuts before brought tea and placed it on a small table next to the cliff. He glanced at the big black dog lying in the emperor's arms and looked at the emperor's hand gently stroking the black dog's head. He seemed to hesitate for a moment and then said, "But I'm afraid this kid won't be able to survive this test." From the first moment he saw Su Tong, the old man saw that this boy's future was, as Zhu Ronzi said, already destined to die. That bloody forest was his burial place. The emperor turned his back to the old man, picked up the tea on the small table, took a sip, and said something strange in answer to the question, "So if you want to see far, you have to stand high." It seems to confirm the picture seen in someone's eyes. Su Tong looked very ugly at this moment, because there was only one dead end in front of him. This was something Su Tong didn't expect. "My child, you dare to cause trouble in the underworld. I admire your courage, but after all, you don't have Taoist Mai Hua's ability, nor his luck." Po Meng was riding on the big green bull, her eyes slightly lowered, and she was not surprised that Su and Tong were in a desperate situation. Or maybe this is what she wants to see. Po Meng recalled what happened that year. Plum Blossom Taoist is making trouble in the underworld. In addition to being a Dao Slayer himself, he also has 3 rare treasures in his hands. He can escape unscathed by relying on his own great luck. Even so, Plum Blossom Taoist only has 3 years left in his life. Originally, he had a chance to become an immortal, but because of this incident, he lost most of his luck and the chance of becoming an immortal. At this point, Meng Po looked at Su Tong. "If you want to imitate the ancestor, you must have that ability, otherwise you will lose your life and you will not be able to blame others." Lilith stood in front of Su Tong. "I want to negotiate with the Ghost Kings." Po Meng shook her head. "I'm not interested in your affairs, I'm only here for him." "I'm here, you may not be able to touch him." Lilith stepped forward. Even if she didn't have a godhead, she was still the daughter of the Lord of Hell. As the princess of the Western Hell, she would not allow this old woman's hands to be contaminated with her ingredients. It's just that Lilith's threat is completely insignificant to Po Meng. Even being directly ignored by Po Meng, how could a little girl who didn't even have a godhead be taken seriously by her? "Old witch, at your age, don't always fight and kill me. I'm afraid you'll get away with me later, and I can't afford to compensate you." Even if there was no way out, Su Tong would not give in. He took Lilith's arm and whispered, "I'll hold on to her, you go first." "No." Lilith rejected Su Tong's proposal without thinking. "You are my unofficial ingredient." Su Tong curled his lips and took the opportunity to joke, "Then you can't catch up. This old witch wants to take me back to make soup. Why don't you cut me now and take it back with you?" Seeing that Su Tong was still thinking of joking with him at this time, Lilith was both annoyed and amused. "But then I thought about it, wasn't it the bold character of this guy that I liked in the first place?" Thinking of this, Lilith couldn't help but glance at Su Tong's belly. "Just right, I really want to try what the braised diced pork tastes like." "Humph, you are a crazy man and a woman." Po Meng pursed her lips and thought, "At this time, you still give me a handful of dog food. Immediately, Po Meng couldn't help but speak, interrupting the two of them who continued to be intimate with each other. I won't bully you. I'll give you 3 moves. If you can get me off this bull with 3 moves, even if you win, I will not only let you go, but I will also personally send you to the gate of hell. When Meng Po said this, she didn't mean to be arrogant, but she wanted to see what other trump cards this kid had. Especially Su Tong's coffin opening technique looked like Yan Shu, so I would like to take this opportunity to learn more about it. No need for 3 moves. Facing Po Meng's wrinkled old face, Su Tong had to correct his posture, 1 move is enough. As soon as these words came out, Meng Po couldn't help but laughed in anger. On this huge underworld, except for a few ghost emperors, nether cult leaders and countless others, no one dared to speak to her in such an arrogant tone. Even if your ancestor came in person, he wouldn't dare to be so confident. If you can make me get off the green ox with just 1 move, I will stay away from you when I see you from now on. I won't lie. Okay, you can try it. Su Tong looked confident, which really made Mrs. Meng feel a little suspicious in her heart. Little did she know that Su Tong was using the team channel to make a call to Gao Zhou and the others, and the content only contained 2 words. Borrow money. Chang Liuzhu, who was riding on the Banbao colt, frowned. These 2 words seemed a bit sensitive to him. Boss, I still have 30,000 script points, all for you. Wait for me. Once I suck this old ghost dry, I'll rush over to help you. Gao Zhou quickly shouted in the team channel. His current situation allowed him no room for distraction, so he hurriedly transferred all the scripts in hand to the team warehouse, and focused on absorbing the essence of the 1,000-faced monster. Gu Zibai also transferred all of his only 40,000 script points into the warehouse. This is almost all Gu Zibai's belongings. Free, don't pretend to be dead, how much money do you have left? Gao Zhou and Gu Zibai's family fortunes were all emptied, but there was no movement from Chang Liuzhu, so Su Tong could only speak to urge them. Chang Wuge looked at his family fortune, but he was actually quite hesitant. This was all the hard-earned money he earned as a killer, cutting it off with one knife after another. But then I thought about it, if this guy couldn't hold on anymore and died in the hands of Mrs. Meng, wouldn't he be even more disadvantaged? Bah, if you die, you will also die in my hands. Remember to pay me back. Thinking of this, Chang Liuzhu reluctantly moved his small treasury to the team warehouse. Su Tong actually didn't have much thought in his heart at first. He thought that if he could collect 100,000 script points, it would be a big deal. But when he saw it, good guy, Chang Liuzhu could get 100,000 script points in one shot. I didn't realize that this kid was actually a hidden rich man. Including the script points in his hand, this amounted to a huge number of 200,000, which instantly made Su Tong straighten his back. At this moment, Su Tong had to sigh, money is the courage of heroes. Po Meng seemed to have noticed something was wrong. When she glanced at him, she found that Su Tong's luck was rising rapidly. He could see his luck was churning above his head, and there was a faint appearance of a dragon coming out of the sea. This change shocked Po Meng, and she screamed in her heart, this is impossible. This kid was obviously at the end of his rope and his luck was about to run out. Why did his luck suddenly improve so much? Just when Po Meng was horrified, Su Tong took out something from the props book. A small bronze tripod. This small tripod looks no more than the size of an adult's hand. It is boxy and covered with dark green patina. The writing on the tripod can no longer be seen clearly, and there is actually a hole as big as a thumb under the tripod's belly. To be honest, this is my first time using this thing, and it was completely accidental. It's not that he doesn't want to try it, but it's just too expensive to use once. If Kyungtian Xiao is the little princess at home, and you ask her to do some housework, she might randomly ask you for some pocket money. Then the fantasy Rubik's Cube is the empress of the family. You can decide how much you pay to the empress. The key is that the more you pay, the more benefits you will get. But this thing is just like the big sword of the club. It costs you half a month's salary to open the card, and the TN fee is uncapped. It's just a big money-burning hole. If it hadn't been for this time of giving it a try, Su Tong really wouldn't have used this trick. But what Su Tong didn't know was that as soon as this item came out, his luck suddenly increased again. When the dragon goes out to sea, there are already signs of transforming into a dragon in response to the disaster. Huh. At this moment, there was a sound of surprise behind the eyes that were watching Su Tong. Some people even looked straight through the void, wanting to see Su Tong's future clearly. As a result, this time, the future they saw was completely blurry and chaotic. Can't see it anymore. At the top of the secluded mountain, the white-haired old man showed surprise on his face. Su Tong's luck changed so fast that it even affected the future variables. No wonder it is often said that the future cannot be trusted, and it can change rapidly in the blink of an eye. This kind of change does not happen casually, there must be some reason. Then his eyes penetrated the space and stared directly at the small cauldron in Su Tong's hand. Looking around, no one could figure out the origin of this cauldron. "Old witch, you've got it ready!" Su Tong shouted loudly, raised the cauldron with one hand, and stepped heavily on the ground with one foot. While leaving a mark on the ground, he jumped up and threw the small cauldron upward, 9 immortals divine refining formation. Buzz. In an instant, 9,000 script points evaporated in an instant, and the small cauldron seemed to be nourished by the script points. A brilliant divine light flashed on the simple cauldron body, lighting up the void for a moment. Boom, boom, boom. Thousands of feet of thunder broke through the sky, and a ray of light flew out of the small cauldron, transforming into a figure wearing a Taoist robe, holding a fly whisk, and holding the immortal cauldron in his hand. "I have a moment to refine immortals, gods, and heaven." Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 804. Who is it? Po Meng raised her head in horror, looking at the light and shadow holding the small cauldron. A sense of crisis arose spontaneously. At this time, the golden light Taoists suddenly divided into 9 figures, each holding one side. Everyone looks different, some are old and some are young, some are men and some are women. Each one holds a magic weapon, which instantly seals the void and turns Po Meng's surroundings into chaos. Suddenly the world was spinning and everything was upside down. I saw the fairy holding Ruyi in her hands, and the surrounding earth suddenly turned into quicksand. An old immortal held a banana fan, and with a slight flash, there was a huge gust of wind. Several other immortals took action one after another. Heaven, earth, water, fire, wind, thunder, mountain, and lake correspond to the 8 elements of the Book of Changes. Old witch, this time, I burned 200,000 script points. Let me see if you can hold on. Su Tong looked at the script elements that were evaporating crazily in his prop book. Although he was laughing, his heart was bleeding. 9 immortals divine refining formation. Spend 9,000 script points to summon the 9 immortals and activate the 9 immortals refining formation. While the formation lasts, every 30 seconds, 900 script points are consumed. This was a credit to Chang Wuji's 100,000 script points, otherwise Gaozhou, Gu Zibai and the little money he had on hand would not have been able to withstand such a burning situation. You brat, if you want to improve your body, you're still young. Po Meng patted the green ox. Suddenly, the green bull let out a deep roar. Driven by Po Meng, the bull's body shuddered and grew into the wind. In an instant, it was as huge as an ancient beast. It's just that the original 4 hooves have now become a single leg. This is the prototype of Qing Niu, the mythical beast Kuei Niu. As Kuei Niu stepped down, a violent wave suddenly devastated the earth and cut it several feet deep, destroying everything. The terrifying shockwave, which nothing could withstand, tore into the void. At the same time, strange light burst out from his body, and wherever the light shined, there was lightning and thunder. Dong 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 dong. Kuei Niu stood erect and motionless, and the flesh and skin all over his body actually emitted bursts of terrifying thunder and drum sounds. One sound drowned out the other, and the sound became louder and louder. He even heard thunder outside the formation, and he felt that his internal organs were following the thunder. The drum beats. After a while, I started to have difficulty breathing and my chest felt tight. This is the Kuei Niu drum. It is said that during the battle between the Yellow Emperor and Shu, Suan made 80-sided Kuei cowhide drums for the Yellow Emperor. It shook for 500 miles at one time and 3,800 miles in a row. She stopped him with 9 strikes and was unable to move away, so she killed him. It can be seen how powerful the sound produced by the Kuei beef skin is. It's just that the Kuei Niu used by Suan was slightly different from the Kuei Niu that Mengpo sat on. Strictly speaking, the blood of the Kuei Niu that Mengpo sat on was not pure and could not always remain in the state of a Kuei Niu. You still need to look like a big green bull. What's more, this big green cow had eaten a belly full of croton and ran all the way. Its vitality was severely damaged. The Kuei drum sound it made at this time was probably only 7 or 8 times as powerful as usual. Even so, Su Tong's face was a little unbearable. His body was still like this, and Lilith's face was also pale. I told you to ring. Su Tong also became furious at this moment, jumped up, and pushed the small cauldron hanging in mid-air. A cauldron holds the world. As Su Tong activated his skills, an immortal pushed the small cauldron, like a comet falling rapidly, hitting Po Meng and the Kuei Niu. Clang! The small tripod was only 3 feet above Mengpo's head, and it made a clear impact sound. Mengpo's face suddenly became ugly. It turns out that what the cauldron hit was not Po Meng's body, but her own luck. Active Skill 1, one tripod holds the world together. It costs 300 script points. After activation, it can summon the immortal cauldron to forcibly suppress the opponent's luck. During the duration of the skill, script points will be consumed again every 3 minutes. I saw that the small tripod was suppressing Mengpo's luck, like a weight like thousands of mountains, crushing Mengpo's luck section by section. Now Po Meng was really panicking. This small cauldron with a hole in it, who knows its origin, can not only guard its own luck, but also suppress the luck of others. At this time, the other 8 immortals took action again. Countless flying sand and rocks rolled up in front of him, forming gusts of wind that destroyed everything. Countless lightning and flames swirled around the gust of wind, and everything in its path was drawn into it and refined into nothingness. Kuei Niu wanted to dodge, but it was too late. A gust of wind hit Kuei Niu's body like a sharp knife, and the quicksand hit Kuei Niu's body like red-hot sparks. For a moment Kuei Niu howled in pain, shook his head and tried to rush out of the strong wind. When Po Meng saw this, she was shocked and angry. There is a black cane in his hand. The shape of the crutch is very strange, it is made of 9 big black snakes entwined. As expected of the Empress Confidante, this thing is actually in her hands. Those figures who were watching the changes were a little surprised when they saw the crutch in Po Meng's hand. This 9-headed dragon was originally a ferocious beast in the underworld. Later, it was said that it was suppressed by the Empress's magic power, and then there was no news about it. Unexpectedly, it turned out to be a crutch in the hands of Mrs. Meng. It is enough to show that the Empress cares for Po Meng. Humph, then she may not be able to win. There was a cold snort, obviously extremely dissatisfied with Po Meng. I saw Po Meng waving her crutch, and the 9 heads on the crutch came to life. They opened their mouths and spat out the light of chaos, which hit the 9 immortals' cauldron. Boom, boom, boom. The small tripod was beaten with a clang, but it did not move at all. After all, This is the most important treasure of Qingcheng Mountain, and it is definitely not an ordinary thing. Otherwise, Taoist Dongxian would be so angry that he would have a stroke on the spot if he knew that this thing was missing. Seeing that this trick didn't work, Po Meng simply threw the crutch above her head. The crutch blended into Po Meng's luck and turned into a pillar reaching the sky, forcibly holding up the small cauldron. Time passed by, and the two seemed to be in a stalemate. But the power of the Nine Immortals' divine refining array is actually a joke. The longer it lasts, the more powerful it becomes. Gradually, the surrounding area began to turn into nothingness, and the Nine Immortals took action at the same time, turning the void into a nameless sea of fire. Even divine beasts like Kuei Niu couldn't stand it anymore. The originally green hair on their bodies began to be quickly scorched, and their huge bodies fell to the ground, transforming into the appearance of green cattle again, letting out bursts of whining sounds. When Po Meng saw this, she was shocked and angry, but her strong personality was that she always rode on the green bull's back and refused to get off. In the stalemate, someone finally couldn't stand it anymore. "That's enough. Po Meng, you lose." A sigh came from somewhere. Su Tong looked up and saw a carriage coming up from the sky in the distance. Ghost Emperor. Su Tong's pupils tightened, realizing that something was wrong, and he hurriedly wanted to put the small tripod away. Unexpectedly, a hand poked out from the carriage, and just by grabbing it from the air, he actually grabbed the small tripod directly in the palm of his hand. Without the small cauldron, the Nine Immortals' divine refining formation suddenly disappeared. Seeing this, Su Tong's eyes showed anger, but before he could speak, a chill came over him. Looking back, he saw that Mrs. Meng had come to his side like a ghost, grabbing his Tianling cap with one hand. "Come down. You brat, I want your life. Get away." The moment she saw this palm being slapped down, Lilith's almond-shaped eyes widened and she crossed over to Su Tong's side. A brilliant magic circle appeared between her hands, and a black beam of light hit Po Meng. Boom! Suddenly, Su Tong's whole body was rolled up by the shockwave like a ball with its string broken, and he was thrown away heavily. At this moment, Lilith's pupils suddenly tightened, her body fell heavily to the ground, and a black arrow was piercing her heart. This change caught Po Meng off guard. Who shot this cold arrow? She had no intention of killing Lilith. Po Meng suddenly thought to herself that it was not good. When she wanted to reach out and pull out the arrow from Lilith's chest, she saw that the arrow turned into powder and disappeared without a trace. No trace. Now even the evidence is gone. In the sky, thunder raged, and a cold voice of questioning echoed under the sky of Hades, "Mother Meng, you have gone too far." A carriage came across the sky, the curtains were opened, and a figure wearing imperial clothes stepped out of the carriage. When Zhou Mu and others saw this in the distance, they were secretly speechless. Looking around, I saw the person who had just captured Su Tong Xiaoding, wearing a luxurious purple and gold dragon robe and a bead curtain imperial crown. His face could not be seen clearly, but it was not difficult to recognize from the clothes. He was Dozitian's Ghost Emperor Shentu. On the other side, the Blue Emperor, the Red Emperor, the White Emperor, and the 5 emperors have reached the 3rd level. At this time, the last curtain of the car slowly opened. Zhou Mu and others took a closer look and immediately wanted to lower their heads and run away. They saw this man wearing a black-white dragon emperor robe, holding a long sword at his waist, and standing behind him. 2 figures. If Su Tong was still awake at this moment, he would definitely recognize that it was his master and master. And this great emperor is none other than the Southern Ghost Emperor, Du Ziren, among the 5 Ghost Emperors. Even the King of Hell, Yin Cao, might not be able to see these great emperors on weekdays, but today there were so many of them that it made one's scalp numb to see them. Especially Du Ziren, this guy is definitely a different kind, one of the ruthless people that Zhou Mu and others dare not provoke. Du Ziren looked at the arrow on Lilith's chest on the ground and frowned for a moment. Mother Meng, you have crossed the line. Po Meng was startled, looking at the ghost emperors in front of her, her expression suddenly brightening and darkening, knowing that what she did here just now might not be hidden from the discernment of these ghost emperors. But it is obviously not an easy thing to make a woman admit her mistake. What's more, although Po Meng's rank and strength are far inferior to those in front of her, she does not give in at all. Looking sideways at Su Tong, this man's soul is a native soul. I suspect that he is related to the god of death, so I took action to keep him. What's wrong? But as soon as Meng Po said these words, the beaded curtain above Du Ziren's head swayed slightly, and the next second, a loud slap hit Po Meng's face. Du Ziren looked down at Po Meng condescendingly, his slender red phoenix eyes forming a straight line under the bead curtain. I said you were wrong, you are wrong. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 805. No one could clearly see how Du Ziren was slapped, but everyone could clearly see the loud slap and the blood flowing from the corner of Po Meng's mouth. Po Meng was even a little dazed from the beating. She stretched out her hand and touched her burning left cheek. She looked at Du Ziren blankly with disbelief on her face. You dare to hit me? As soon as he finished speaking, a burning tingling sensation hit the right side of his face. Snapped. This time the slap was even harder, causing Po Meng to stagger and almost fall. If you're wrong, you should be beaten. Du Ziren's voice was very crisp, without any scruples or mercy. Po Meng was really hurt by the beating now. She raised her head and glared at Du Ziren, and opened her mouth, but in the end she still didn't dare to say a word. I squinted at the ghost emperors on the side, but I saw that these ghost emperors were unmoved, as if I didn't see anything. Seeing this, Po Meng understood instantly and couldn't help but sneer. Haha, I understand, I was wrong. I was a self-proclaimed free man, but I only found out who was in the game when I woke up from my dream. How calculating are these great emperors? After co-authoring and scheming together, you two made the world go crazy, and it turned out that the clown was actually you. What else could Meng Po say? Sure enough, the future is not trustworthy, and few who want to control the situation will end well. Since you know your mistake, please ask Po Meng to return to the underworld on your own and wait for retribution. Emperor Qing opened his mouth to give Po Meng some face. Po Meng turned around and glanced at Su Tong unwillingly. Her inconspicuous behavior obviously made Du Ziren a little annoyed, and she urged impatiently, if you don't leave yet, don't you want me to send you off? Po Meng noticed the impatience in Du Ziren's eyes, her heart trembled, she sighed, patted the green cow, then stood up and left. As soon as Po Meng left, several ghost emperors also entered the carriage one after another, preparing to leave. Please Shentu stay. At this time, Master Shuigui, who was standing next to Du Ziren, suddenly raised his hand and said, that cauldron belongs to the disciples. It is a matter of life and death. Since Shentu has appreciated it, please return it to Shentu's day. As soon as these words came out, King Di and others stopped and looked at Shentu with half-smiling smiles. Shentu was also stunned for a moment, and looked at Shuigui with some surprise. With just one glance, he seemed to have seen through Shuigui's past and present lives, and immediately let out a faint smile. He is indeed the man of destiny, so brave. As he said that, he took out the small cauldron from his sleeve and threw it to Du Ziren. Thank you Shentu. Shuigui and Mr. Song bowed their hands again, only to hear Shentu snort like a joke, I can't bear it. After that, he walked into the carriage. Seeing this, King Di and the others looked sideways at Shuigui, and immediately got into the carriage, only to hear the neighing of the divine horse, and the carriages left one after another. Du Ziren returned the small cauldron in his hand to Shuigui and said slightly dissatisfied, if you are so reckless next time, I won't care about you. In response, Shuigui took the small tripod with a smile, my grandson risked his life. As a master, I can't watch him lose his life and lose money. Otherwise, the people will be scattered and the team will be difficult to lead. Ah! Duziran curled his lips, but he couldn't tell that Shwegoi was complaining about him in a different way. There is no need to return the bow. This thing is given to him as compensation from me. I, Duziran, never treat my subordinates badly. Duziran took out a small package from his sleeve and handed it to Shwe, saying earnestly, "Old man, you have a good disciple." After that, he turned around and walked back to the carriage. Shwegoi and Mr. Song looked at each other, got off the carriage, and bowed to Duziran. He saw Duziran's carriage slowly turning around, and then a cold scolding came from the carriage, "You guys are still here, what are you doing here, get out." After saying that, 5 rays of green light came out of the carriage, like 5 big hands covering the sky, grabbing at the surrounding woods. Xia Yan, who was originally kidnapped by Chang Wahen, felt his eyes blurred. The next second, Zhou Mu and others were dragged behind the carriage and sped away. Is this the end? Chang Wahen looked confused. He didn't understand what happened from beginning to end. He still didn't know. But when I looked again, I saw that the mount and the dagger in my hand had not been taken away. I thought that this trip was not a loss, so I immediately rode towards Su Tong. Su Tong was unconscious for who knows how long. When he woke up, he only felt a splitting headache. I could vaguely hear my master's voice in my ears. "Su Tong, Su Tong." A soft call came, causing Su Tong to gradually open his eyelids. He blinked, and in the blurred vision in front of him, faces were swirling around him. He immediately shook his head again and covered his forehead with his hand for a while before he really woke up. "Master? Master?" Seeing that the master and master were all there, he turned around and saw that the eldest princess, Lao Dao, and Gu Zibai were all here. I. Su Tong frowned, and a series of memories poured out of his mind. Then he remembered that he had been knocked unconscious. His mind suddenly buzzed, and he exclaimed, "Where is Lilith? What happened?" After hearing Su Tong's question, everyone suddenly fell silent. The eldest princess helped Su Tong up and looked aside with a complicated expression, "You can't be blamed for this, it's not something you can stop." Su Tong's heart skipped a beat when he heard this, and a very bad premonition came over him. Looking in the direction Lilith was looking, she saw those demon warriors forming a circle. Seeing this, Su Tong's face suddenly turned ugly. He pushed away the eldest princess's hand and rushed forward. When he saw Lilith lying on the ground, Su Tong's face suddenly turned pale. This. Looking at the wound on Lilith's chest, Su Tong's eyes instantly turned red. He turned back to look at the eldest princess and others, who killed her. Mengpo. The eldest princess's answer was decisive, but then she added another intriguing sentence, "It must also be Po Meng." Su Tong was startled and looked at the eldest princess. He has not yet been carried away by anger. Anyone can kill Lilith, but only Po Meng cannot. Po Meng was not interested in Lilith at all, and she knew very well that Lilith was a hot potato. She wants to kill Lilith. What is she trying to do? Could it be that she wasn't the one she wanted to kill? All kinds of troubles came to his mind, making him want to ask for answers. But even if you ask clearly, what's the point? Walking to Lilith's side, looking at Lilith's messy hair and dusty face, give me some time. The demon warriors beside Lilith hesitated for a moment, and finally stepped aside. Su Tong stretched out his hand and used the paper control technique, and suddenly a large piece of yellow paper surrounded him, forming a circle of shielding screen. Then he took out a few things, including sharp knives, nail clippers, needlework and other items, intending to tidy up Lilith's appearance. Do you need help? Girls' things are always much more sophisticated than men's. At this time, the eldest princess stood outside and said, Su Tong was startled, then nodded, and let the eldest princess in. I saw the eldest princess taking out some rouge and gouache from her purse. I will tidy up my appearance, and you can treat the wounds. Su Tong nodded, took out the scissors, cut open the clothes on Lilith's chest, and looked at the hole in her chest. Through the wound, you could see an empty heart under the punctured flesh and blood. Lilith's words flashed through my mind, in this world, I only believe in you. Thinking of this, Su Tong's eyes showed deep frustration. He knew in his heart that even if the murderer was not Po Mang, no matter who could kill Lilith so simply, he would not be able to seek justice from the other party. After all, I am too weak. I thought that I could defeat Zhang Haisheng, and even be able to press and rub the enlightened person who was one level above me on the ground. I already had enough capital. But it wasn't until today that he realized that compared to those truly superior figures, he, an ant, could only move forward according to their fingers. Even until the answer to the mystery was revealed, even though he realized that he had become a pawn in the hands of those big shots, he had no idea what he had done. This feeling simply made Su Tong roar inwardly. The eldest princess stood aside and frowned when she saw the change in Su Tong's expression and the flash of madness in his eyes, worried that Su Tong would blame himself too much for Lilith's death and leave his inner demons behind. So I can only try to explain, this matter is not your fault in the first place. There are many conditions for the death of gods. Lilith's fall can only mean that her luck is at the end and has nothing to do with you. Hearing this, Su Tong raised his head and looked at the eldest princess. Do you know what's going on? I don't know. If you want to know the whole story, you can ask your old man. He came with the ghost Emperor Du Ziren. He knows best what is going on. The eldest princess looked at Su Tong. I just want to tell you that the gods are very foresighted about their own fall. Perhaps Lilith has anticipated this day from the beginning. Think about it, whether she will die before she dies. Give you something important. Hearing what the eldest princess said, Su Tong was stunned for a moment, and the first thing that came to his mind was the key. But what exactly is that key? Lilith didn't tell herself. Thinking of this, Su Tong calmed down for a moment, thinking about various possibilities. But until he sutured Lilith's wound, Su Tong finally didn't understand why Lilith left this key to him. All right. At this time, the eldest princess has already put new makeup on Lilith. I want to change her clothes. Are you sure you want to stay here? Su Tong was stunned for a moment, then shook his head. No. As he said that, he was about to walk out. Head. When Gao Zhou and others saw Su Tong coming out, they immediately rushed forward. Gao Zhou didn't know how to comfort Su Tong. So he could only pretend to be carefree and said, although our mission failed this time, it was still a worthwhile trip. We went up to the Yishan mountain, down to the dog cave, oh, and there was also the big black dog raised by Mr. Fu. The dogs were beaten to tears by us. Gu Zibai on the side rolled his eyes when he heard this. You are so shameless. You were chased by a dog and you were jumping up and down. If we hadn't helped you, you would have become a piece of shit. It's really a waste. The fat monk gave you the tips. And the cloth bag, if I had known earlier, it would have been better to leave it to us. What kind of kit and cloth bag? Su Tong raised his eyebrows and looked at the three of them doubtfully. Gu Zibai told Su Tong everything about the fat monk taking them to the dog cave. When he heard the end, when the big black dog was hit by a cloth bag and ran away in despair, Su Tong suddenly thought of the big black dog that pulled him up the mountain. Suddenly, Su Tong's eyes widened, his pupils trembled, and he muttered silently without realizing it, soldiers at the foot of the mountain conquer the dangerous peaks, and the fragrance of the withered cypresses and peach blossoms disappears. The devil's heart is exchanged for the Bodhi fruit, and the exquisite body opens up and takes root. The devil's heart is exchanged for the Bodhi fruit, and Linglong's body is enlightened and takes root forever. There was a buzz in Su Tong's head, and he immediately ran back like crazy. Hey, head. Seeing that Gao Zhou was speaking well, Su Tong suddenly turned around and ran back, feeling somewhat confused. Tear. He tore open the screen and saw that the eldest princess was changing Lilith's clothes. Seeing this, she quickly reached out to cover Lilith's chest. When he saw it was Su Tong, he couldn't help but frowned again. What are you doing here? Su Tong didn't have time to explain. He just rushed to Lilith's body and stared into the eyes of the eldest princess. You just said that there are conditions for the fall of gods, right? The eldest princess was confused by Su Tong's inexplicable question. However, she has never been the kind of woman who is nagging. Since Su Tong asked, she replied, yes, the most important thing is the Godhead, but her divine personality has been blocked by Yuxuan Dan, so when she is killed, she is equivalent to death. Hearing this, Su Tong couldn't help but take a deep breath, and the doubts in his heart suddenly cleared up. No wonder Lilith named herself to be her guide. It turned out that he was the key to saving her from the very beginning. Thinking of this, Su Tong said to the eldest princess, help me protect the law. The eldest princess was startled, nodded, stretched out her hand and summoned the infinite black water, completely surrounding it. At this time, Su Tong took out the black water dragon-tooth dagger. This dagger once pierced his body, and its sharpness was no less than that of the pure Yang sword. Su Tong was seen holding the dagger behind his back, reopening the sutured wound on Lilith's chest, and then taking off his shirt. There is a special mark imprinted on his heart, which is the curse planted by Lilith. This curse contains part of the power of Lilith's Godhead. Along with Su Tong's thoughts, the curse was gradually activated. Bang bang bang. The heart sensed the master's power and began to beat faster. Boy, don't do anything stupid. Mortis was also alarmed. As the Demon King parasitic on Su Tong, he could feel Su Tong's thoughts and immediately spoke to stop Su Tong from doing this. If you do this, you will die too. The eldest princess saw the mark on Su Tong's heart and understood Su Tong's thoughts, and immediately reminded him. Oh yes. Su Tong patted his forehead and smiled at the eldest princess. I almost forgot about this thing. I saw Su Tong taking out something like a pearl from the props book and holding it in his hand. Yellow spring fruit, from chapter 32 of this volume. Holding this thing, the living will not fall into hell, and the dead will not scatter their spirits. Passive skill 1, Death Delay. When the holder suffers fatal damage, the passive effect is triggered. After triggering, it can keep the holder alive for 3 hours. This object was a gift given by King Linghuo to test Su Tong when he invited him to Dokeng. This thing happened to come in handy at this moment. Seeing this, the eldest princess still disagreed. This thing can only keep you alive for 3 hours, what about after 3 hours? Have you thought clearly? Then let's take a gamble and see if I can survive. Su Tong put away the underworld fruit and held the dagger behind his back. Looking at the eldest princess' nervous expression, he raised his eyebrows playfully. Trust me. He slowly raised the dagger, but before it fell, a hand suddenly grabbed his wrist. In this case, why not come with me? As the eldest princess spoke, she twisted her fingers, snatched the dagger from Su Tong's hand, and struck Su Tong's heart with the knife. Ah! It hurt so much. What is the head doing? Gao Zhou and 3 others stood outside and waited, but the eldest princess sealed the surrounding area with black water. No matter how anxious they were, they didn't know what was going on inside. Etc. At this time, Gu Zibai suddenly stretched out his hand to signal Gao Zhou to quiet down. Then prick up your ears and listen carefully. What did you hear? Seeing this, Gao Zhou and Chang Wuji also came over. Gu Zibai signaled the 2 of them to be quiet. It seems like a heartbeat. Bang, bang, bang. Just listen to the sound of a strong and powerful heartbeat coming from behind the curtain of black water in front of you. Su Tong held the heart in his hands. his eyes gradually became intense, and he saw wisps of strange and inexplicable aura wrapped around the heart, causing every beat of the heart to exude pure dark power. You saved me last time, and I'll give it back to you this time. Unfortunately, it won't be easy to eat your cooking again. Su Tong took a deep breath and put the heart in his hand into Lilith's body again. At the moment when the heart and Lilith's body merged again, the heart gradually stretched out its slender blood vessels and merged with Lilith's body again. Suddenly, a strange power surged out of her heart, Lilith's eyelashes trembled slightly, and her heartbeat was beating faster and faster, as if it contained some strange rhythm. Even the eldest princess felt that her heart rate was affected and began to accelerate. Bang bang bang. Realizing that the strange heartbeat was getting faster and faster, the eldest princess frowned and had to step back until she completely exited the water curtain. Not only the eldest princess, this strange heartbeat sound became louder and louder, and gradually even the black water could not block it. Gao Zhou and others outside also began to realize that their own heartbeats were also affected. Something's wrong, get out of here. Gu Zibai's face changed slightly, and his heartbeat was getting faster and faster. It was also a great burden for them, and he immediately stepped back. Huh. The old man on the carriage in the distance raised his head and his eyes became confused. He took out 6 copper coins and threw them on the ground. He couldn't help but widen his eyes when he looked at the hexagram in front of him. That's weird, why is this hexagram again? The old Taoist was particularly familiar with the hexagram in front of him, because this was the second time he had divined such a hexagram. The first time was when he met Su Tong, and the hexagram divined for him was to live toward death. I thought that this hexagram was already a very rare hexagram, but I didn't expect to encounter this hexagram again today. Bang 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 bang. The heart beats one after another, as strong as the drum of Kuei Niu. At this time, Su Tong's ears suddenly moved, and he heard the sound of something breaking. He called out the props book, glanced at it, and a gleam flashed in his eyes, and reached out to grab the props book. A stone appeared in his hand. The stone was as clear as jade. It was Su Tong's opportunity to become enlightened in heaven. But at this moment, under the beating of Lilith's heart, the stone in Su Tong's hand gradually developed cracks. Listen carefully, and you can hear the same heartbeat sound coming from the stone. The devil's heart is exchanged for the Bodhi fruit, and Linglong's enlightenment takes root. Su Tong looked at the stone in his hand and recited the strange prophecy silently. The meaning of the sentence suddenly became clear in his mind, and he placed his heart on his chest. Then he sat cross-legged next to Lilith, closed his eyes and carefully felt the changes in his heart. Every time Lilith's heart beats, Su Tong can feel the subtle vibration in his chest. Like something cracking from the stone. Suddenly there was a click, and a small hole opened in the stone, followed by the second and third, and more holes appeared in the stone. The strange thing is that these round holes seem to be alive at this moment. They begin to open slightly. After breathing in the surrounding breath, wisps of crystal light pour out from the stone, reconnecting Su Tong's disconnected heart veins. Suddenly a strange feeling surged into Su Tong's body, as if his whole body was wrapped in a warm force. Boom! A strange aura surged out from Su Tong's body, breaking out of the blockade of the eldest princess's black water, and then shot straight into the sky. 3 brilliant Dao fruits appeared behind Su Tong, each of which was shining with gleaming light. Enlightenment. On the carriage shaft, the old man's eyes widened, and his mouth opened wide in surprise at the bright light in front of him. This kid. Master Shuigui and Master Song also poked their heads out of the carriage. Seeing this, Mr. Song was already grinning from ear to ear. His eyes were not only filled with pride, but also pride. After all, for disciples who have attained the Taoist realm, if they let go in ancient times, this alone was enough to make him famous. Huh! At the top of the secluded mountain, the white-haired old man had already retreated, but after taking 2 steps back, he suddenly noticed something and looked eastward, with a hint of surprise in his eyes. Enlightenment. It wasn't just him who was surprised, the ghost emperors who had left at this moment also felt something. After counting with his fingers, a look of surprise appeared on his face. While they were surprised in their hearts, their expressions inevitably turned weird. They all looked away. They didn't expect such a result. Duziran raised the car curtain with his fingers and looked back, his brows furrowed for a moment. Would you like to? A sneaky shadow appeared next to Duziran. The shadow was holding a long bow, and the dark arrows were already on the bowstring. That's it, it's too late. Duziran waved his hand, and upon seeing this, the shadow retreated into Duziran's shadow and disappeared. Looking at the strange light flashing in the east, Duziran suddenly laughed, looked in the direction of Yashin again, and said meaningfully, "Sure enough, if you stand high, you can see far." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 806. In the past, Su Tong thought that enlightenment was a deeper understanding of one's own path, but it was not until this moment that he truly understood that it was not that. Enlightenment, enlightenment, and enlightenment. The so-called opportunity is more like a medicinal introduction. The medicinal introduction is important, but what is more important is the understanding of ideas. These 4 words. With one thought, one's heart can be aligned with the sky. With one thought, one can cause changes in the heaven and earth. One's own Taoism is no longer limited to its form, but should be integrated with the heaven and earth. Therefore, those who become Taoists are all heavenly beings. So, opportunity is more like a clever way to achieve enlightenment even if there is no opportunity. Zhang Haisheng is the latter, and he became enlightened by force without taking advantage of opportunities. Su Tong suddenly understood that these things can only be understood at this level. Without this level, he will only have a partial understanding of what you say, and may even understand the wrong meaning and go astray. Su Tong then had an idea and immersed his consciousness into his physical body to achieve the effect of inner vision. At a glance, he saw that his heart was shrouded in a crystal green light. There was a stone heart in the light. Although it was a stone, it had 7 orifices. The heart is the residence of God, the master of blood, the master of veins, and the master of the body. The heart has 7 orifices, 5 aggregates, and 6 roots, which are thousands of times better than others. He can hear the sounds of all things and speak the languages of all things, and has infinite mysteries. Every time he exhales and inhales, his heart orifice swallows the essence, nourishes his body, and lives forever. This heart inevitably reminds Su Tong of Bigan in the novel Feng Shenyan Yi. I don't know if this thing is the same thing as Bigan's Kakiao exquisite heart, but after careful reflection, Su Tong feels that it's not much different. Immediately, Su Tong exited the inner vision, opened his eyes, and took out another object. Great sun casting pill, unparalleled treasure. Those who eat it can obtain the innate Tao foundation, forcibly break through the great realm, and have an 80% probability of obtaining the Godhead. If there is a Godhead, the Godhead can break through to a higher level. Ordinarily, since I have just achieved enlightenment, I should meditate and stabilize myself. It is the best time to take this pill after I have truly mastered the realm of enlightenment. But with the exquisite heart of 7 apertures, Su Tong's thoughts were many times faster than before. After looking inside, he saw himself thoroughly. Although he became enlightened, it should be said that it was a fluke. The 3 Taoist fruits were all obtained by chance, and were completely different from what the eldest princess and the old Taoist had cultivated themselves. This led to a big problem. That means your own practice is mixed but not refined. But this can't be entirely blamed on myself for cheating, as she was born in a secluded background. There is no orthodox practice path like the 3 sections in the 7 sects. The person who can reach the Grand Master is the Master. This step is already the highest. The inheritance of the 7 sects in the past generations has no practice path to this step. The Master himself also gathered the wisdom of hundreds of schools of thought and created Baishenko, and then suddenly reached the realm of a great Master. As the saying goes, if the upper beam is not straight, the lower beam is crooked. My disciple is also following the same path, but he is far better than his master in miscellaneous knowledge. Unfortunately, I don't have the master's understanding to be able to bring together hundreds of schools of thought. In the last script world, Doi Yuan spent decades of his youth in order to kill Dao, but in the end he still failed. My foundation is messy, and if I want to cut off the path, it will probably be dozens of times more difficult than Tu Fei Yuan. Rather than struggling with this aspect, it is better to become an immortal as soon as possible. As for whether you can take another step forward, let's wait until the time comes. Moreover, with the Great Sun Dao casting pill, I can obtain the innate Dao foundation, which just makes up for my unstable foundation. He first tried to throw the elixir into the fantasy Rubik's Cube, intending to try upgrading it to see the effect, but after taking a look at the upgrade price, he gave up the idea. Well, the first level of enhancement requires 3200 script points. A rough calculation in my mind shows that the second level is 6400 and the third level is 12800. To break through the sixth level and achieve a qualitative improvement, you need 124,000 script points. Oh, this doesn't include the consumption of previous upgrades. Looking at the pitiful script points he now had, with only 80,000 script points left, Su Tong decisively gave up the idea. These 80,000 points of script points are already the team's entire property. If they burn them all, they will cry in the next script world. With this thought, Su Tong directly put the elixir into his mouth. Why don't you come out yet? Outside, Shuigui and others had already approached, and Mr. Song was looking forward to it. But when I thought about it, I could not help but feel proud that I had taught a well-behaved disciple who had achieved enlightenment. From time to time he raised his head and looked at the old man with a half-smile. This made the old Taoist complain for a while, isn't it just enlightenment? The master leads you in. Cultivation is personal, and you are the one who leads the way. Why are you so excited? Ha 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 ha, once you are a teacher, you are always a father. The person who is a master does not want someone to be better than someone else. Mr. Song pinched his beard, his face full of pride. The Chinese civilization is like this. Forefathers planted trees for future generations to enjoy the shade, all hoping to see one generation become better than the next. Whether it is from 3 religions or 9 schools, or from a father-son family. In order to make the next generation strong, the older generation can dedicate their whole lives, endure all the hardships and endure all the hardships. Everything is just 2 words. Inherited. But this kind of inheritance carries a very strong imprint. Just like Su Tong was born in the 7 sects, even if he has mixed academic disciplines and practices both Buddhism and Taoism, in the final analysis, he is still the leader of the 7 sections. This imprint cannot be changed and will last throughout his life. Even if my disciple becomes a land immortal in the future, I, Old Song, will also be his master. Mr. Song was so proud that he wished he could raise his tail to the sky. The corner of the old Taoist's mouth twitched, he glanced at Shuigui, and found that Shuigui also smiled but said nothing. Although it was not as exaggerated as Mr. Song, the expression of smiling but saying nothing clearly meant he said, yes, even if you have cultivated land, immortal, I am also his master's grandfather. Looking at these 2 arrogant people, the old Taoist had nothing to say for a moment. After all, who could let him not have a promising disciple like Su Tong? Just as she was about to speak, the eldest princess's face suddenly changed. She quickly removed the water curtain and shouted at the same time, "Get out of here!" After saying that, I saw the eldest princess's sleeves turned into black water, and her long sleeves were rolled up, like rolling waves, directly rolling up Gaozhou and the other two people and retreating. Upon seeing this, the old Taoist took Shuigui and Song Lao and ran away. Namo Amitabha. A loud Buddha's name was chanted in unison, followed by a 6-foot-long golden body appearing behind Su Tong. Just listening to the mysterious scriptures sung from Su Tong's mouth, the Buddha's light was bright for a moment, which made people's minds turbulent, and they even had the urge to rush up and worship. This is the Buddhist scripture of saving people. Is this kid going to turn into a Buddha? Not to mention Mr. Song, even Shuigui couldn't help but look dumbfounded. But soon, Su Tong's expression calmed down, and the 6-foot-long Vajradharma behind him gradually dissipated, and thousands of waves emerged around him. He seemed to be like a water source, summoning endless river waves, rolling forward. At this moment, Su Tong seemed to have turned into a water god, blending in with the surging waves around him. Cold light shot out when he raised his hand, and countless icicles exploded, turning the surroundings into a biting cold forest. My dear. Seeing this scene, Gaozhou and the other three were shocked. I didn't expect Su Tong's change to be so terrifying. No, this kid is dead. The old man watched with wide eyes, couldn't help but exclaimed, and almost bit his tongue. The eldest princess frowned. She naturally knew about the great sun-forging Dao pill in Su Tong's hand, but Su Tong had just become a Dao and swallowed this pill in the blink of an eye. Wasn't he afraid that his foundation would be unstable? Jean Dao, land god. Mr. Song didn't care about this, his eyes were about to turn into stars. Although it is an exaggeration to say that enlightened people are heavenly beings, they are still within the scope of humans after all. However, when you reach the path of killing, you are a land immortal. Although the word land is added in front of this immortal, it is also a god and earth immortal. The earth immortal is also called the all-knowing real person. He is also the yang god. 3 flowers gather on the top of the head. 5 qi are directed toward the yuan. A point of true yang transforms the whole body into yin. The mind can wander under the sun wherever the mind wanders, it can know. Therefore, he is said to know the real person all over. Su Tong became an earth immortal, which made Mr. Song so happy that he didn't even know how to place his little hands. At this moment, Su Tong's hands drew inexplicable trajectories. The wind and thunder were deafening, and the lightning and thunder were like the creation of the world. As soon as the secret technique came out, the world trembled, and a strange talisman appeared behind Su Tong. This talisman was neither innate nor acquired, but it had the ability to seize the opportunity of innateness and interpret the destiny of acquired nature. There is no doubt that this is the method of Yan Shu. After Su Tong revealed his 3 Dao fruits one by one, his expression gradually became peaceful, and a strange aura spread out from his body, forming a mist that no one could see through. What kind of Dharma and Tao he wants to evolve, and why it was interrupted, I can't tell. Everyone showed doubts and watched carefully. Aha! Suddenly a long sword was transformed, and the blade was swung as fast as lightning, and the infinite sword energy seemed to gallop like a wild horse. This is exactly the passive carried by the Pure Yang sword, the Pure Yang sword code. Amitabha. At this time, another little man appeared in the mist, with his hands clasped together and chanting Buddhist sutras. The image of the dragon elephant appeared behind him. This was the title skill of Venerable, the Dragon Elephant Sutra. Ding bell. The demonic bell rang. A little man, with a wave of his hand, countless pieces of paper are flying. More and more villains appeared in the mist, each representing a skill, whether it was acquired through his own practice or obtained from the prop book. These abilities were displayed one by one, and then all were performed to the extreme. No one can say how wonderful the changes in Su Tong's body are. Although in terms of knowledge, whether it is the old Taoist, the master, the eldest princess, or even the master Song Lao, they all surpass Sutong in terms of accumulation of knowledge. But after all, they didn't kill the way. This is like how rich the theoretical knowledge is, and the more it is on paper, after all, it is not as good as Sutong to just rush in and see what happens. Finally, all the white mist in the sky closed up, and Sutong's temperament changed drastically again. His blood was drained, and he was as hot as a walking furnace. He was as dazzling as a bright spark in this vast underworld. Stretching out his arms, he saw a treasure furnace emerging behind him. It was the innate Tao foundation that Sutong consumed from the De Sun Zhu Dao pill. Ruyi Stove. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 807. I saw that the belly of the stove was round and round, with 2 ears and 3 legs. There were innate Tao patterns on the stove, which shimmered and moved, as if there were infinite mysteries. On the furnace lid, there is a cloud salamander holding in a coil, with its mouth open and spitting out fireworks, and it looks slightly ferocious. This appearance seems to be very similar to the fairy furnace mentioned by Sutong Tang, and even Yun Yuan lying on it has a similar look. The reason why it is like this is precisely because this is the look that Sutong specially imitated. There is an innate Tao foundation in the great sun-casting Tao pill. I combined the innate Taoist foundation with the ancient Taoist fruit. On the one hand, it made up for my problem of being complicated in my studies and not being proficient in learning. It sublimated the ancient Taoist fruit, and the Taoist fruit's ability was so great that I was able to upgrade to the great Sunday Ruyi furnace. On the other hand, it is also about making plans for your future. The compassion of Buddhism is inconsistent with one's own nature of mind. The Taoism is profound, but I am a dabbler, so I can get twice the result with half the effort. Only Yan Shu is the most suitable for you. You can use it as soon as you get it. You only need to know what it is, and you don't need to know why. It is very practical for you. After all, I'm still lazy. With the blessing of this innate Taoist foundation, this great Sun Ruyi furnace is the key to my future. Sutong put away the Ruyi furnace behind him, stood up slowly, glanced at Lilith, and found that Lilith was still in a coma, but had regained her vitality, but her divine personality was damaged, making her become again the state of walking out of Yushan Palace before. "Tou, you have become an immortal." Gao Zhou and others hurried over, staring at Sutong, dancing with excitement. Only a team with strong players can go further among future players. Sutong glanced at Gao Zhou and found that Gao Zhou had also broken through. Sutong looked around and saw that Gao Zhou's aura was just like that of a normal person. The corpse energy gathered in his chest and turned into a horizontal bone. This is not turning into bones. Although zombies do not have Dao fruit, they are similar to Dao fruit without turning into bones. As its name suggests, this bone is immortal and possesses unique magical powers. As long as Gao Zhou can cover his whole body with immutable bones, he can advance to a higher level of wandering corpse. From then on, he will not grow old, die, and will be abandoned by the heaven and earth outside the 6 realms of reincarnation. He can enter and exit the 2 realms of yin and yang, upstream to the 9 heavens, and downstream to the netherworld. It can be said that he ascends to heaven and enters the earth. Hey, good luck comes. Gaucho grinned. It seemed that after entering the underworld, his luck suddenly became particularly good. This is not surprising. This guy practices corpse path and is rejected by Yang Shi. Even if he is lucky, he will still be unlucky. This was also the reason why the eldest princess had to hide in the palace and refuse to go out. In comparison, Chang Wuhan and Gu Zibai's luck was naturally a bit average, but their luck was not bad. Chang Wuhan received the bronze dagger, which had the power to kill gods and was equally sharp. Yuchiniang Jian also harvested a Xingguo class leopard colt, which is a rare divine colt. Gu Zibai was nourished by the yin and yang spring in the back mountain, and his physical body transformed greatly. He only needed to go back to warm up, and his entry into the Taoism was already a certainty. "You brat, you've made a lot of money this time." Master Song Yu, Master Shuigui and others came over. Everyone looked at Su Tong, and the more they looked at him, the more frightened they became. This boy was progressing too fast, and in the blink of an eye he had left both the old Taoist and the eldest princess behind. Especially the old Taoist, he is so envious that he is drooling. The teachings of master and master are better. Even if he reached the Dao-slaying realm, Su Tong did not dare to have any confidence in his master, otherwise he believed that the soul of his master's Shu would definitely kick him in the butt. "This thing is extraordinary, you must keep it carefully." Shuigui took out the 9 Immortals cauldron and returned it to Su Tong. Seeing the 9 Immortal cauldron, Su Tong couldn't help but be startled. He didn't even expect to be able to take it back. After all, the Ghost Emperor took it away without leaving any room for himself. Unexpectedly, the master actually helped me to beg for it back. As a result, Su Tong was about to say something at the 9 Immortals cauldron, but he saw the master wave his hand. "This is not the place to talk. Get in the car quickly and send the envoy away to avoid a long night of dreams." Upon hearing this, everyone felt that the master was right. They put Lilith on the carriage and everyone set off quickly. On the way, Su Tong wanted to find an opportunity to ask his master what happened, but his master, Mr. Song, waved his hand towards him and pointed to the top of his head. Seeing this, Su Tong knew that it was inappropriate to ask at this time. The convoy traveled along a small road to the foot of Dozai Mountain. Looking around, he saw a huge city gate standing in front of him. "Hey, this place looks so inviting." Gao Zhou looked at the city gate in front of him. Even though he was a zombie, his scalp was numb. It turned out that the city gate was actually made of countless skeletons. What was even more disgusting was that these skeletons were still alive, piled together densely, and making weird noises from time to time. If you listen carefully, you can even hear the crunching sound of bones rubbing against each other. At the foot of the city gate, a giant covered in armor sat on a hill, surrounded by countless groups of guards wearing heavy armor. Even before you get close, you can feel the chilling air. This is not comparable to those generals and cavalry. Anyone can feel the overwhelming murderous intention of these ghost generals and ghost troops. Especially when the giant-like ghost general looked at Su Tong with his 2 shining pupils, Su Tong could not help but feel a bit cold in his heart. However, this strange feeling was soon replaced by the hot blood on his body. To block. "Yinkasi, we are here to welcome the envoy. We have been ordered to escort the female envoy out of the gate. Please ask this general to open the door." Su Tong straightened his clothes, stepped forward and shouted. The voice was not loud, but the words were crisp and clear, echoing above the city gate, causing many ghost soldiers to look sideways at Su Tong. "Finally here." The giant slowly stood up, his huge body making people feel an unprecedented sense of oppression. Then the ghost general lowered his huge head and let out a hoarse laugh. "Boy, in this trip, you have offended everyone in the underworld. They are all following orders." Faced with the ghost general's teasing, Su Tong's face showed neither joy nor anger, and his attitude was neither humble nor arrogant, which made the ghost general burst into laughter immediately. "Ha ha 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 ha, what a man to follow orders." The laughter was so loud that the city gate behind him also let out a shrill wail. "Who did I think could turn the underworld upside down like this? I didn't expect him to be a small receptionist." The ghost general stood up and looked down at Su Tong and his group. "I like it, I'm happy, boy, remember my name, Dozishan Tongshen Guo King is the king. I don't think we will have a chance to compete in the future." Although King Tongshen Huo's words were a little provocative, there was no malice in them. Instead, his words revealed his appreciation for Su Tong. Warriors worship the strong. Ever since Su Tong rushed out of Yushan, the news had spread throughout the underworld, and this news shocked many people. a little guy who had entered the Taoist realm single-handedly killed a group of Taoist generals, which aroused the interest of many people. Even if these generals are led by a bunch of miscellaneous soldiers, in the eyes of King Tongshen Huiyu, they are not even shit. If they can do this, it is inevitable that people will not be interested in paying attention to them. So ever since Su Tong and others entered the area of Dozai Mountain, King Tongshen Huiyu has been silently paying attention to the situation here. For Su Tong's courage to confront the Northern Yin demon cavalry head-on, and to go against the old witch Po Mang, I can't help but feel a bit of admiration in my heart. After that, he waved his hand, "Open the door. Open the door." The gate of hell closed, and tens of thousands of Yin soldiers shouted in unison. The sound seemed to shatter the underworld. Kaka kaka. The gate of hell in front of me slowly opened a gap. Through the gap, you can vaguely see a road leading to the underworld. Su Tong bowed his hands to the king and expressed his thanks. Walking to Lilith's carriage, she opened the curtain and looked inside. Seeing Lilith lying inside with her brows furrowed from time to time, he stretched out his palm and patted her little hand. "I'll give it to you. We're here. Next time I have a chance, I'll eat the delicious food you made." Although Lilith was unconscious, she seemed to be able to hear what Su Tong said. She seemed to instinctively want to grab Su Tong's hand, but Su Tong dodged it. "Get on the road and go back as soon as possible. Don't stay in my land of China. I will not protect you after you leave the gate of hell." After hearing this, all the demon warriors looked at each other, then nodded to Su Tong, and then quickly pulled the carriage out of the gate of hell. Ding! Main Mission 3 completed. The prompt of the prop book sounded, and Su Tong took a deep breath and watched Lilith's team disappear before the gate of hell. Ding! This special scenario world mission has been completed. You can choose to stay here for 10 days, or you can choose to return to reality directly. The beeping continues. Su Tong thought for a while, then turned back to look at his master. "Go back as soon as possible. It's not appropriate for you to stay in the underworld now." Master Shuigui saw what Su Tong meant and said. This time, Su Tong had offended everyone in the underworld, both those he could provoke and those he couldn't. Although there are a few ghost emperors here who are pretending to be pretentious, but now that Lilith has come back to life, I don't care what the attitude of these big bosses is, but if Su Tong is still walking arrogantly on the underworld, I'm going to lose the face of these big guys. Su Tong also understood this, and wanted to say goodbye to the fool, but after thinking about it, he finally chose to leave. He made too much noise this time. Before the fool was with him, it could be said that it was official business. Now if he goes to see the fool again, he will bring trouble to the fool. It could be seen that Su Tong was still tied up in his heart, so Master Shuigui comforted him and said, "Don't worry, your master and I still need to stay here for a few days. If we meet a fool, we will say goodbye on your behalf." Seeing his master say this, Su Tong felt relieved. With a wave of his hand, he used the Beishan button to collect all the Yin soldiers, including the Ban Bao Cold captured by Chang Wugu. "Come back." After looking at each other and Gao Zhou and the others to make sure that no one had any unresolved problems, Su Tong silently said, "Return." Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 808. As Su Tong silently returned, his body was suddenly pulled by a gentle force and he quickly left the underworld. At the same time, a huge mirror appeared in front of Su Tong. Su Tong looked at the mirror and saw the image of Lilith's convoy returning to the western hell appearing in the mirror. Standing in front of the gate of hell, Lilith looked back, as if she could sense Su Tong's gaze. With a charming smile on her lips, she waved to him and shouted something. Although Su Tong couldn't hear it, he could read Lilith's words through lip reading, "I'm waiting for you in hell." Ha, only a fool would go to hell with you. Although I understood what Lilith meant, her words sounded strangely weird. Then, in the picture in the mirror, A person that Su Tong didn't expect appeared. The door of Yinkasi slowly opened. I saw a person with a bruised face limping out of the door. It was none other than his immediate boss, Yang Yu, Yang Yinsi. Following the orders of the great demon king of Bian, the great emperor of Fengdu, Yang Yu, the chief of Yincao, manipulated his position, engaged in malpractice for personal gain, committed crimes against his superiors, appointed nepotism, and became angry and resentful. Therefore, he was removed from the post of chief of Yincao, his status was demoted 2 levels, and he was demoted to the city god. Let's see the effects. A sharp sound of reading came out, causing many little ghosts to laugh secretly. It seems that they are eager for Yang Nyo to step down as soon as possible and get out. However, Yang Nu didn't take it seriously. He raised his head and prostrate on the ground, shouting thanks. Then I got up from the ground, taking a deep breath and feeling relieved. I secretly said that I was lucky. Although I was dismissed from office and demoted, no matter what, this was the best ending. After all, Su Tong had offended everyone in the underworld this time. As a result, Su Tong slapped his butt and left, but he suffered a lot from Yang Yinsi, the scapegoat. Looking back at the gate of Yinkasi, Yang Yinsi didn't want to stay here for a moment, he just wanted to leave this sad place as soon as possible. After getting on the carriage, Yang Yu quickly left the city of Fuzi, and it wasn't until he left the city gate that he finally felt better. There is desolation outside the city gate, and a group of ghosts walk into the city of wasted death at the urging of ghosts. A little girl was humming a song as she walked. The singing voice was very sweet, but Yang Yu heard it harsh. Thinking of her experience of being pressed to the ground and rubbed during this period, she felt even more unhappy. She grabbed the snacks on hand and began to sing. Throw it out the car window. Stop singing, it's so annoying. As soon as Yang Yu finished speaking, sure enough, there was no singing outside. Yang Yu suddenly felt much more comfortable and glanced sideways out of the car window. Yang Yu's face suddenly stiffened, and he saw that the snack he threw hit an old lady squarely in the face. The old lady was riding a big green bull. Her cheeks were still swollen. She stretched out her hand to wipe off the snack crumbs that hit her head. She tilted her head and stared at Yang Yu through the car curtain. Ouch, fierce old man. Yang Yu twitched the corner of his mouth, hurriedly got out of the carriage, ran to Po Meng's green ox, and apologized repeatedly, Mr. Meng atones for his sins. I definitely didn't mean to be lowered. Mrs. Meng was not angry at all, and looked at Yang Yu with a smile, ha ha ha, I know, I understand. Hearing this, Yang Yu's expression softened, and he was about to speak when Po Meng's voice changed, you didn't mean it, you are sincere. Yang, you have such great authority. Ah! Yang Yu was startled, and suddenly looked up, only to see that the 9-headed dragon crutch in Po Meng's hand had already fallen down. Snapped. Seeing Yang Yu's head being smashed out immediately, all the ghosts around him grinned and closed their eyes. Yang Yu's body was headless, and for a moment he was crawling on the ground like a headless fly. Humph! How did you, the little leader of the underworld, become the head of the underworld? Thinking of the slap on his face and the red and swollen wounds on his mount. The more Po Meng thought about it, the angrier she became. She opened her mouth and spit out a ball of green fire, which burned Yang Yu's body into a ball of white ash. Now I felt a lot more comfortable. I glanced sideways at the silent ghosts around me, and my eyes immediately glanced at the face of the girl who had just sang. Little doll, why don't you stop singing? Keep singing. The girl had never seen such a scene before. Looking at the ashes on the ground, she was frightened by Po Meng's cold eyes. Her mind suddenly went blank and she began to sing tremblingly. Listen to me and say thank you. Because of you, the ashes are scattered all over the ground. Looking at the picture in the mirror, Su Tong twitched the corner of his mouth and silently observed 3 seconds of silence for his immediate boss. When Su Tong raised his head again, the scene in front of him had shifted to Dokeng. Fool! A figure appeared, making Su Tong's eyes widen. The fool walked to an inconspicuous place in the corner of the city. At this moment, there was a man wearing heavy armor waiting for him here. Have you thought clearly? The man had a green face, fangs, and a ferocious expression. If Chang Wuju and Gao Zhou saw him, they would definitely recognize the identity of this big man. He is the guard at Changguan, the back gate of Dokeng. Hey hey! The fool grinned, took something out of his arms and handed it to the guard. Don't want. Seeing this, Su Tong subconsciously stretched out his hand to stop him. Only when his palm touched the bronze mirror did he realize that he had returned. What the fool took out was none other than the Ksitigarbha lotus. The big man held the lotus in his hands with ecstasy on his face, but then he looked at the fool in confusion. Do you know the value of this thing? This is the merit golden lotus of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, the leader of the netherworld. If you hold this thing, you will never fall into hell. You can enjoy the treatment of a great god. You can see the ghost emperor without kneeling, and you can see Yama without worshipping. If you hold this thing, you will never fall into hell. When this object reaches the stage of reincarnation, it can go straight to heaven. The big man repeatedly explained the value of this thing, but the fool was unmoved. I promised it to you, it's yours. Seeing that the fool gave it so easily, the big man had a look of disbelief on his face, and he put the thing away decisively, for fear that the fool would regret it. He was about to turn around and leave, but couldn't help but turn around and look at the fool. Is it worth it? The fool waved his hand. He is my brother. With the words brother, Su Tong's eyes couldn't help but moisten, and he was so choked up that he couldn't speak through the mirror in front of him. Brother? The big man frowned, obviously not satisfied with this answer, and sneered, it's ridiculous, your brother is in the underworld and has offended everyone he can. Now he just slaps his butt and walks away. What should you do? Without this save your life, I'm afraid you won't be able to escape being sent to the 18 hells. Facing the threat of the big man, the fool just took out the snack Su Tong gave him from his pocket, with a simple and honest smile on his face, as if he had realized something. If I don't go to hell, who will? After that, he smiled loudly and turned around and left. Until the fool left, the big man stretched out his hand to take out the golden lotus, and then saw the golden lotus hanging in the air, emitting golden light. Under the golden light, the appearance of the big man also changed drastically, and his whole body was enveloped in the golden Buddha light. Amitabha. Recite the Buddha's name, pinch the flower with your hands, reach out and pick it, and you will take this golden lotus of merit in the palm of your hand. He glanced at the direction where the fool was leaving, smiled and nodded. The most perfect thing, the most beautiful thing, the merit is immeasurable. After saying that, he turned into a golden light and disappeared without a trace. When the picture reaches this point, it disappears along with the bronze mirror in front of it. The ensuing settlement prompt sounded in Su Tong's ears, but the difference was that the settlement this time was much shorter than before. Ding! Congratulations to the player for completing the scenario world. This script world is a special script world. Props and title rewards will not be calculated, but the script points and certification evaluations obtained will be doubled. Ding! You completed the main task 1, report and received 1,600 script points. Ding! You completed the main mission 2, receiving the envoy and received 1,600 script points. Ding! You have completed main mission 3, descending the mountain and earned 1,600 script points. Ding! You completed side mission 1, climb the Yishan mountain and get 4,000 script points. Ding! You completed the side mission, exploring the palace and received 4,000 script points. Earned 3 gold badges, 3 silver badges, and 1 bronze badge. Your certification rating has been improved. You are currently a LV3 certified player. You can check the permissions you have obtained. The last script world, Sutong, was a script world that forcibly descended on Gaozhou, so there will be no certification evaluation. When the reminder sound disappeared, the world in front of Sutong began to become clearer. When he looked again, he saw that he had returned to the Mei family's residence. The eyes of Gaozhou and Gu Zibai also returned to clarity at this moment. I'll go and that's it? After Gaozhou woke up, he complained because the reward given this time was too small. Compared with the effort, it is simply out of proportion. Sutong was also surprised by this and couldn't help but frown. It was indeed missing a bit. The difficulty this time cannot be said to be very high, but the degree of danger is definitely not small. Although they were given a compensation of doubling the script point reward, the total of the main tasks and side tasks this time was only a few. Actually, I think our gains are not small. Gu Zibai said thoughtfully. During this trip to the underworld, Sutong was able to jump 2 levels and reach the Dao-slaying realm, which in itself was a heaven-defying gain. And his physical body has been nourished by the yin and yang spring, and entering the Tao is already a certainty. Gao Zhou condensed his bones. Chang Wugu received the goods of Shenbing and Ban Baoju. Overall, the goods received were not small. This is not counting the fruits they got in the back garden of Yushan. They can make a fortune just by selling these fruits. That's not how it was calculated. Gao Zhou waved his hand and felt that the gains in script space could not be included in the final calculation. The two are still arguing about this. But I heard Sutong suddenly say, no, Gao Zhou is right, we do still have a reward that we have not received. After hearing Sutong's words, the two stopped arguing. And there are rewards. Gao Zhou and Gu Zibai looked back at Sutong. It's hard for Sutong to explain, because he can't get this reward yet, and he can't confirm it until his master comes back. Not just a reward, but a saying. This time, they were regarded as fools by the big bosses of Hades and were allowed to manipulate them. I don't ask Master and the others to get justice for me, but at least I want him to understand what these big guys are planning. But thinking about it, it would be some time before Master and the others could come back, and he was not short of these days, so he signaled Gao Zhou and the others to wait a little longer. Brother Su. Early the next morning, while Sutong and the others were eating breakfast, they heard Meidu knocking on the door. After Gao Zhou opened the door, he saw Meidu walking in hurriedly. Brother Su, I heard you are leaving. When Sutong heard this, he first glanced at Meidu and found that the boy was very weak. It seemed that he didn't sleep well last night. When Mr. Mei was a host, Meidu was afraid that it would be unsightly to leave the tent open, so he didn't go. It wasn't until early this morning that he learned from his family that Sutong had told the old man that he was planning to leave. So he ran over in a hurry. Ha ha ha, I've been staying at your house for so long, eating and drinking, it's time to leave. Sutong said jokingly. What's the matter? If you stay at my house, it's too late for my family to be happy. Meidu didn't want Sutong to leave, and when he was about to persuade Sutong to stay for a few more days, Sutong waved his hand. You're a single dog. You're used to driving manual transmissions, but you also have to take care of people who drive automatic transmissions. Your brother Gao hasn't seen his wife for a long time, so it's time to go home and see her. As soon as these words came out, Meidu immediately blushed and thought to himself, how does Brother Su know that I have been driving a manual transmission all night? Gao Zhou also blushed and kicked Sutong's stool. What nonsense are you talking about? He, I have something to do and need to go back to Luodu. After a while, when we have finished what we are doing, we will come here to see you again and let's have some fun. Hey, okay then. Although Meidu was reluctant, Sutong had already talked about this and could only reluctantly say that he would leave the booking of air tickets to him. After Meidu left, Sutong took out all the harvest and sorted it out. First, divide the scripts in your hands. The script originally cost 200,000 yuan, but ended up using the 9-dragon cauldron once and burned 120,000 yuan. This speed of burning money is really unpleasant. Su Tong estimated in his heart that if he wanted to defeat Po Mang, the 200,000 might not be enough. In addition to these script points, Su Tong also took out all the books he bought from Dokeng bookstore and placed them on the table. A particularly large wooden box, filled with extruded porcelain basic prop cards. Such a big box made Gao Zhou and Gu Zibai dumbfounded. Gu Zibai picked up a book casually, read 2 pages carefully, and almost screamed with joy. Splitting muscles and breaking bones, this has been lost for many years. Then he took out another book, The 5 Tigers' Broken Door Knife, and his eyes gleamed for a moment. For a martial arts idiot like him, this thing is like an elixir. I couldn't put it down as soon as I picked up a copy, and I wanted to turn it into a prop card right away. When Su Tong saw this, he motioned to Gu Zibai and Gao Zhou to pick a few copies each. Although they were all basic prop cards, it did not prevent some of them from being high-quality items. As for the rest, Su Tong gave it all to Gu Zibai and asked him to take it to the exhibition area and sell it. Let Gu Zibai decide the price himself. After all, many of them are martial arts secrets, and Gu Zibai knows the value best. Hey, what a pity, my prop book is almost full, otherwise I would have kept a few more. Gu Zibai's heart ached. Su Tong calmly patted him on the shoulder and said that there was nothing to ache for. They were all basic prop cards, and no amount of them would make a difference. After comforting Gu Zibai, Gao Zhou began to pack his luggage. They were on a different path from Su Tong, and they didn't intend to wait any longer. They planned to leave tonight. Boss, when do you plan to leave? Gao Zhou asked Su Tong while packing his luggage. Su Tong thought for a while. Tomorrow, I have to say goodbye to someone tonight. Farewell? Who is it? Gao Zhou and Gu Zibai were startled. They had basically said goodbye to the Mei family. Who else was left out? Su Tong held his chin with one hand, looked at the handwriting in the bowl, and said with a smile, a kind woman. Under the night sky, Su Tong released his second soul. Looking at the little fat man who was not in a high mood, Su Tong flicked the little fat man's head with his hand. Don't be wronged. There is no banquet in the world that lasts forever, and neither is farewell, this is to pave the way for the next meeting. The little fat man had a grimace on his face and seemed very reluctant. Go ahead and say goodbye to your mother-in-law. It's always better than letting her miss you. Su Tong put his hand on the little fat man's head. The little fat man nodded in understanding, and then he flew up into the night sky. Through the street lights. When the little fat man appeared on the street again, he didn't dare to get close. He stood in the corner hesitantly, not knowing how to say goodbye. I poked half of my head out, and from a distance I saw an old woman in floral clothes standing guard under the dim street light. There were no customers in front of the stall. The old woman looked around from time to time, as if she was waiting for someone. Mother-in-law, put more spicy pepper in a bowl of chow chow. At this time, a motorcycle came and stopped at the stall. 2 young men, a man and a woman, got out of the car. They shouted before they even got off the car. The mother-in-law nodded, but couldn't help but glance back. Seeing his mother-in-law's distracted look, the man couldn't help but ask, "What is your mother-in-law looking at?" Hearing this, the mother-in-law glanced at the big bowl prepared aside with a smile and said with a smile, waiting for the little grandson to come. Hey, children's souls have special privileges. They might be borrowed by ghosts and reincarnated. As soon as the man finished speaking, he was kicked in the butt by the woman. You are the only one who talks a lot. If you weren't a fool like you who took me racing, I would have a baby now. The man was scolded by the woman, but he did not dare to complain. He could only lower his head and laugh with her. The mother-in-law didn't take it seriously and just said, if he can really be reincarnated, I will feel at ease. The little fat man hiding in the corner was stunned when he heard this. Just listen to my mother-in-law continue to say. This baby is very cute. When I first saw it, I thought this baby was like my grandson. I thought that if he could be reincarnated in the future, he would become someone else's grandson. I felt bad, but then I thought about it. If he can really be reincarnated, I will be happy for him in my heart. As long as he can live a good life, it will be better than anything else. The little fat man hid in the corner and his eyes turned red. At this time, the mother-in-law brought 2 bowls of chow chow to the table. The woman looked at the bright red hand and her mouth was watering with greed. She took a spoon and started stuffing it into her mouth. While eating, she couldn't help but ask, then if he is really taken away by evil, don't you feel sorry for him? Well. Upon hearing this, the mother-in-law was stunned for a moment, and then looked at the big bowl at hand. No matter whether he was taken away by evil spirits and reincarnated, I will always carry this bowl for him. If we meet again one day, I will make it for him. While talking, my mother-in-law looked at the big bowl at hand and couldn't help but feel lost in thought. In a daze, he suddenly felt someone pulling his arm. When he looked down, he saw the little fat man standing next to him, with his honest little face grinning. Mother-in-law, I'm hungry. The mother-in-law was startled, and her heart was broken by the mother-in-law's shouting. She reached out and picked up the little fat man. Oh, you little guy, I thought you weren't coming. After saying that, he put the little fat man down and said, wait a minute, my mother-in-law will trick you right now. Far away in the room on the other side, the corners of Su Tong's mouth raised unconsciously, and he could feel the satisfaction in the little fat man's heart at this moment. The warm time is always short. When the street lights started to go out, the little fat man returned to Su Tong's body. Su Tong knew that he had said goodbye to the old lady. Realizing that the little fat man was in a bad mood, Su Tong comforted him. Why are you crying? Maybe we can come back in 10.5 months. Then I will buy a house here and we will live here for a long time. Do you want to eat? You can eat every day. Soothed the little fat man. After Su Tong tidied up the room, he walked out and came to the Mei family ancestral hall. This was the last thing he did before leaving. Pushing open the door of the ancestral hall, Su Tong looked at the portrait of the Plum Blossom Taoist. Now that he was a Dao-killing immortal, when he looked at the portrait again, he suddenly had a completely different feeling. I saw the Plum Blossom Taoist in the portrait, whose figure was ethereal and seemed to be real and illusory. There is an invisible force surrounding the portrait. Especially those eyes, which were actually looking at him. Heir of the Plum Blossom lineage, headmaster of the 7 sects, I have paid my respects to the Grand Master. I have been bothering you for many days, and today I bid farewell to the Grand Master. Su Tong looked at it for a while, but didn't see the doorway, so he took out 3 yellow incense sticks, inserted them on the incense burner and bowed heavily. However, at this moment, the portrait in front of him shook slightly, and a plum blossom floated out from the portrait and landed in front of Su Tong. Then the plum blossoms actually scattered, falling a little pink ink, leaving a line of small words on the ground. The Ragnarok is coming, remember to stay away from the god of death. End of this volume. I will take a day off tomorrow to sort out the plot and my thoughts on the next script world. The next script world, the battle between China and Japan, also means that this book has officially entered the middle stage, and it will enter the competition with the Western gods and players from other countries. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 809. Ding dong. The plane is about to descend. Passengers, please fasten your seat belts and please do not walk in the aisles. Turn off your mobile phones and computers with wireless internet access or turn off the network signal. We deeply apologize for the delay caused by the thunderstorm and wish everyone the best. Have a nice flight. Sir, please fasten your seat belt. We are about to land. The stewardess stepped forward and checked each passenger's seat belt again. On the plane, Su Tong put down the newspaper in his hand and looked out the window. The golden Buddha's light shimmered slightly in his pupils, and he could see the scenery of Luodu below the ground through the clouds. This is not the first time he has taken a plane to overlook this ancient capital of 13 dynasties. It feels different every time, but this time it's especially obvious. Looking around, you can see the fluorescent twinkling stars. Behind every fluorescent spot seems to be connected to another place in time and space. These places are the entrances to the ghost market. Only Luodu, an ancient capital that had been prosperous and devastated several times, could have so many ghost markets. After activating the life icon again, it can be seen that the haze is surging on Bamang Mountain. At the bottom of the mountain is a prison. A fierce aura is like a wall, blocking this haze from the city. It's just that in recent years, urban development and construction have actually led to buildings being built on Bamang Mountain. People living in Yinshan Mountain are frowned upon. Turning his eyes again, the entire Luodu was enveloped by an air current. It was hard to say whether it was good or bad. If this airflow went upwards, it might turn into a wisp of green energy, causing Luodu to rotate. If you are full of energy, you will have no chance of success for at least 20 years. In this kind of place, the strong will always be strong, and the weak will be in decline. With great fortune, revival will be a matter of time. The plane gradually descended, and a faint drizzle hit the windows. When Su Tong walked out of the airport, Chang Wahen was already waiting for him outside the airport. This guy had several murder cases on his body. At this moment, he could only use a jack mask to disguise his face. He sat in a private car and waved to Su Tong. Su Tong took a look, but did not get in the car. He looked at the car and found that it was still a new car. Where did it come from? Don't worry, the foundation is very clean. Chang Wogu knew what Su Tong was worried about and said that he bought the car with his new identity. In addition to the car, he also had a house. It seems that this guy has been living in Luodu since he separated from Su Tong in Qingcheng Mountain. After Su Tong got in the car, Chang Wukai said, "I went to see the old man yesterday." Guess what? Su Tong closed his eyes and curled his lips. "I think you probably didn't see the old man and were kicked out." "How do you know?" "How new? The old man doesn't like your temper anymore." It's not that Lao doesn't like Chang Wuju. On the contrary, Lao's love for Chang Wuju is never weaker than his own. Chang Wuju, this kid, has been a restless master since he was a child, especially the old magician who loves him very much. He likes to trick these two fools into doing bad things. As a result, although Old A loved this boy, his personality jumped up and down, which gave Old A headache. It's okay if he's here, but if he's not here, Old A doesn't want to see this kid. Ha ha ha, you guessed wrong. Chang Wahen suddenly grinned. "I actually saw the old man yesterday. The old man wanted you to wait and go find him the day after tomorrow." Chang Wogu's face was full of pride, like a child who was eager to show off to his brothers after successfully gaining favor from his parents. Su Tong was stunned for a moment and looked at Chang Wahen suspiciously. But after seeing the sullen expression on Chang Wuju's face, which didn't look like he was lying to himself, he frowned and said, "When you entered the hospital, did you see any suspicious guy?" Chang Wogu knew what Su Tong meant. Although Zhang Haisheng is dead, the wanted notice he left behind is still there. Su Tong is worried about whether someone will take advantage of the hospital. "I know what you're worried about. Don't worry. When I entered the hospital, I checked it carefully. The hospital was very clean. I didn't see that thing without eyes." Hearing Chang Wuju's assurance, Su Tong felt more relaxed. Returning to Luodu, Su Tong inevitably felt melancholy in his heart. When he walked out of the hospital, Mr. Song gave him a place to stay. Later, when Mr. Song left, he burned the house clean. But after walking out of Luodu, he slipped back into the script world and witnessed with his own eyes how the master burned that terrible thing in Buman Mountain. The old era has come to an end. The last time I came back, Feng Lelu and his party didn't expect that they would be turned against them. I thought that if I left Luodu again, I wouldn't know when I would be able to come back, but aside from old A's birthday, my purpose of coming back this time was more to find out my life experience. Is that woman his mother, and why should I remind myself to be careful about old A? All kinds of thoughts came to mind, which inevitably cast a haze in Su Tong's heart. Only one person seemed to be able to give him an explanation for these doubts, old A. With many doubts, Su Tong glanced out of the car window, stopped the car. Chang Liuju looked at Su Tong sideways. It's hard to come back, I want to go for a walk by myself. Su Tong pointed to Lijing Gate in the distance, Master's house is over there. Now that I'm back, I always have to go back and take care of the house for Master. If you have anything, just call me on the team channel. The phone is convenient. Chang Wugu had also seen Mr. Song and Shui Gui. Seeing this, he didn't doubt their presence. He pulled the car aside and said, "Then I'll come find you the day after tomorrow. I'll still be here at this place." Okay. Su Tong waved his hand, and after Chang Wuhan drove away, he waved his hand to stop a taxi. "Master, go to the 5th courtyard. Middle." The driver nodded, stepped on the accelerator and headed straight towards the 5th hospital. The driver was also very talkative on the road, chatting casually and talking about the recent news. "A few days ago, something big happened in Xi'an, did you know?" "Oh? What's the matter?" "No, the Chongyang Palace in Xi'an exploded. I heard that the fire burned the Chongyang Palace to the ground, and several Taoist priests died." "Oh, what a bad luck." The driver sighed when he talked about this. He heard that the Chongyang Palace was one of the ancestral palaces of Taoism. The 1,000-year-old building was burned to ashes in a fire. Su Tong didn't pay attention at first, but when he heard the words Chongyang Palace, he immediately raised his eyebrows and remembered that his wife seemed to have said that she wanted to go to Chongyang Palace. Could it be that the mistress did it? Su Tong frowned for a moment. He didn't think that the master's wife could take any advantage in Chongyang Palace. Think about it, the Mei family, to put it bluntly, is just one of the 9 streams, but the Mei family's heritage is so great that even Su Tong, who lives in the Mei family, finds it unfathomable. Especially the portrait of the plum blossom Taoist. Every time he thinks of the plum blossom floating out of the portrait, Su Tong inevitably has a strong intuition in his heart. Plum blossom Taoist may not be dead. To be honest, Po Meng said before that Taoist Mai Hua made a big fuss, and even though he escaped unharmed, he also damaged his luck and his fate as an immortal. Po Meng would never lie to herself. But what kind of character is Taoist Mai Hua? The 4 small negative qualities of skin, paper, knife, and turtle are all closely related to Taoist Mai Hua's Yizhuang. In terms of death, Taoist Mai Hua has definitely brought this art to the extreme. It is not an exaggeration to say that he can reach the heaven and the earth. Even if his luck is cut off, he is still a terrestrial immortal in the Tao-killing realm. Su Tong didn't know whether he could become an immortal, but if he didn't want to die, Su Tong felt that with the methods of this patriarch, it might not be impossible to survive until now. The Mei family is still like this. The Chongyang Palace is the ancestral palace of the Jindan section with roots in the Chunyang lineage. Its status is similar to that of Longhu Mountain. The fact that he was able to make it back and forth in Qingcheng Mountain was due to many factors, such as Mei Xian first affecting Qingcheng Mountain's luck and so on. But if it were Longhu Mountain instead, Su Tong felt that he might not be able to get out of Longhu Mountain. I hope the master's wife and the little girl will be safe. Su Tong silently broke into a cold sweat for his wife and the goddess. While he was talking, the car had already stopped in front of the gate of the fifth courtyard. After paying the fare, Su Tong got out of the car and looked at the familiar hospital in front of him. There was a hint of gloom in his eyes. His life Ikemen and Chen Mutong were activated at the same time, and he looked around. Chang Wuju was a guy who sometimes had very careful thinking and sometimes had very wild thoughts. Su Tong was not very reassured about him and wanted to personally confirm whether the hospital was normal. As for what he said, the day after tomorrow, I can't wait until the day after tomorrow. Regardless of whether it was the old man's true words or not, he wanted to find out the truth. In the end, as a big deal, I just said that I didn't meet Chang Wuju. After glancing around to make sure he didn't see anything unusual, Su Tongke walked into the hospital swaggeringly. Hey, what are you doing? As soon as he entered the door, a nurse stopped Su Tong. Su Tong looked up and down and found that the other party still had an internship sign, so he casually said, "Go home. Go home." The nurse was startled, then caught up and grabbed Su Tong's arm. "You can't go in, this is not a place for casual entry." When he met a newcomer, Su Tong, he felt helpless. He stopped and asked, "What about your Dean Wang?" "Dean Wang? He resigned and went home some time ago." "Resign?" When Su Tong heard this, he suddenly had a bad feeling in his heart. After the old dean left, this Dean Wang worked hard to get the position. I heard that he gave away hundreds of thousands just in gifts. How long had it been since you became the dean and you resigned? I didn't even get it back. Yeah, he seems to be in low spirits. I feel like he was acting like a god in those days, the nurse complained. When Su Tong heard this, he didn't intend to continue chatting with the nurse. He coughed lightly and suddenly raised the nurse's chin. He saw the big girl in the hall wagging his tail, and a pink light flashed in the nurse's pupils. The nurse immediately stayed where she was. She didn't know how long she stayed there before she came to her senses in a daze and scratched her head. She didn't know why she was standing here in a daze. At this moment, Su Tong had already walked into the door of the archives room with ease. After getting rich, he created a group of clones, turned into a key, inserted it into the keyhole, and opened the door of the archives room in a few clicks. Looking at the files in front of him, Su Tong began to rummage in the archives room. He wanted to find his file, but after rummaging around, his file was gone. Then I looked through the files of Old A, yeah. As a result, Old A's file could not be found either. While searching, Su Tong picked up a new file and threw it on the table. However, he failed to throw it properly and the file fell to the ground. Su Tong didn't pay attention at first, but when he picked up the file and glanced at it, huh? Why are there so many new people? I saw that the file book was full of files and information of newly admitted patients. The photos were brand new and even had the smell of printer ink on them. The new faces made Su Tong feel a little confused. Although there were patients in the fifth hospital every day, it did not mean that all patients would be admitted to the hospital for treatment. Sometimes in the inpatient unit, it is normal for no new faces to appear for 2 or 3 days. As for those seriously ill patients, it is even rarer. But this time, more than a dozen new faces, both men and women, came in together, but they were all placed in the intensive care building. Just when Su Tong was confused, the door behind him was pushed open. "What do you do?" Su Tong looked back and saw a middle-aged man wearing gold-rimmed glasses, slicked back hair, and a white coat, looking at him seriously. Su Tong glanced at the badge, Chief Physician. I immediately felt baffled. I knew all the doctors in this hospital, but the nurses were new and the doctors were also unfamiliar. Just when Su Tong was confused, the other party rushed forward and grabbed Su Tong's sleeve. "Who are you?" I called the security guard. Seeing this, Su Tong frowned, and just when he was about to ask Dia to control the person, the information in his hand suddenly slipped and fell to the ground, and a file fell squarely on Su Tong's feet. When he looked down, he saw a brand new photo on the file, which looked exactly like the chief physician in front of him. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 810. Su Tong knelt down, looked at the file at his feet, and then looked at the chief physician in front of him. Are you sick? The other party was startled. You have medicine. Unexpectedly, as soon as he said these words, Su Tong suddenly punched this guy in the face with his fist. The dull sound directly knocked people flying. Then he fell heavily to the ground and fainted on the spot. Su Tong adjusted his clothes, looked at the man lying on the ground, and spat coldly, You are lucky, you just have it. After saying that, he turned around and picked up all the files on the ground and rummaged through them page by page. When a new page of files appeared in front of Su Tong's eyes sank, but soon, a smile appeared on his face. The photo on this page of the file is that of a young girl. The girl is sweet and looks like a twin to the little head nurse who just stopped her. Haha, this is really interesting. Seeing this, Su Tong not only did not find it strange, but found it interesting. He glanced at these files, and his mind quickly compared the people in these files with the faces he saw after entering the door. As a result, a shocking fact appeared in front of me. Are all the people in the hospital mentally ill? From the chief physician in front of him to the cleaning lady in the hospital and even the security guard, they are all crazy. And everyone's disease history is completely blank. Okay, old man, I wanted to give you a birthday present, but I didn't expect you to have more fun than me. Su Tong curled his lips, walked up to the unconscious guy on the ground, took off the clothes of the guy in front of him, put a suit on him, and strode out quickly. Encountering two security guards patrolling along the way, Su Tong kept walking and casually said hello, Lao Zhou, Lao Yang, please remember to take your medicine. The two security guards were startled and couldn't help but glance at each other with confusion on their faces. Degree, didn't you take any medicine? I don't take medicine. Hashtag why are you running out here if you don't want to take medicine? Come back with me and take medicine. /U003E /U003C, no, I won't eat it. Not far away, I heard the sound of fighting behind me, but the strange thing was that the doctors and nurses passing by did not stop the fight between the two security guards, but turned a blind eye. There were only a few family members who came to see the doctor, and they looked at the two security guards with blank faces as they beat him more and more fiercely, with black question marks on their faces. Su Tong walked to the consultation room with small steps and bounced. He glanced inside and saw a mother and daughter sitting in front of the young doctor. The mother seemed to be very concerned about her daughter's condition and repeatedly talked to the doctor in front of her about her daughter's condition when she became ill. My daughter is usually fine, but recently she often has emotional breakdowns, bites people, and even barks like a dog. When the doctor heard this, he looked up at the girl, his expression became serious, he pinched the girl's chin and asked her to open her mouth, looked at it carefully, and shook his head. Seeing this, both mother and daughter looked unhappy, and the mother hurriedly asked, How is the doctor? Well, do you have a boyfriend? The doctor ignored the mother's inquiry and stared at the girl and asked. No. The mother's expression suddenly changed and she spoke first. But the girl blushed, lowered her head, and whispered in a mosquito-like voice, Yes. The mother's eyes widened. Have you had sex together? How many times? The male doctor seemed to be used to this and continued to ask seriously. The girl was startled at first. She raised her head and looked at the serious expression of the doctor in front of her. She blushed for a moment, gritted her teeth and whispered, 5 times. You're such a loser. The mother on the side almost fainted after hearing this. She raised her hand and wanted to hit someone, but as soon as she raised her hand, she put it down helplessly. She glared at her daughter with hatred and gritted her teeth and asked, "Doctor, is my daughter's illness related to her boyfriend?" However, the doctor curled his lips and said, "It's okay, I'll just ask." Hearing this, both mother and daughter were shocked, especially the girl, whose head was buzzing. She pointed at the doctor in front of her and cursed, "You are crazy." "Yeah, I'm a psychopath, I kill people without repaying my life, ha 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 ha." The doctor jumped on the table, lifted up his white coat and started to go crazy. Outside the door, Su Tong looked at this scene. Instead of feeling shocked, he couldn't help laughing, "Ha ha ha ha, interesting, so interesting." Then he looked at another consultation room. It was better not to look at it. When he saw Su Tong, his eyes were filled with anger. The picture is so beautiful that it cannot be described. The doctors, nurses, and even the security guards here are all acting. This is some kind of hospital, it's simply paradise. While passing through the ward, a nurse hurried over and said, "Director, go and take a look. Those patients are getting more and more exaggerated." Su Tong nodded and followed the nurse into the patient care observation area. Just as he entered the large iron door of the corridor and the door of the observation room on the side, a face suddenly hit the glass. He blinked wildly at him through the glass of the door. Something was stuffed into this man's mouth. With his body tightly bound by a straitjacket, Su Tong took a look and realized, oh, he finally met an acquaintance, Director Kong. Appeared in Volume 5, Chapter 4. After Director Kong recognized Su Tong, he blinked at him crazily and shouted with all his strength, "Save, save, me." Seeing this, Su Tong glanced at the nurse walking by and called out to the nurse, pointing at Director Kong, "This patient seems to be manic. Double the dose and give him a swab risperidone, double the amount of other medications." The nurse nodded. Continuing to walk forward, more and more familiar faces appeared in front of Su Tong. Some of these people had been numbed by the torture, while others were still struggling. They blinked crazily when they saw Su Tong. "Here, give him some sleeping pills. Increase the dosage of chlorpromazine and perfenazine." After a round of inspection, Su Tong had already figured out the basic situation of the hospital clearly. While I felt amused, I couldn't help complaining about Chang Liuju, this idiot. Such a big fool, this guy actually told me that the hospital was quiet and peaceful. However, after walking around this time, I really didn't see Dean Wang. I don't know if what the nurse said is true. If it is true, I can only say that Dean Wang is lucky, otherwise, I will give him some extra information. Su Tong didn't want to know why the hospital became like this, and he didn't bother to find out. He turned around and walked towards the isolation building for serious illness. Go through the corridor and into the courtyard. Under the big toom tree in the yard, several old acquaintances wearing hospital gowns were gathering together to chat. Su Tong had met these people before and waved to them. These people glanced at Su Tong and even waved enthusiastically, inviting Su Tong to chat with them. This was naturally declined by Su Tong. "You'd better not listen to this kind of lunatics chat, as it will make you doubt your life. Don't try to correct them, because they are more reasonable than you." A doctor once made this mistake. As a result, he resigned within 2 months and was said to have suffered from depression. Across this open space is the single isolation building. The door was not locked, so Su Tong opened the door and walked in. I walked up the stairs to the second floor, but as soon as I walked up, I saw a big fat mountain blocking the stairs. "Hey, it's brother." The fat girl wearing a nurse uniform turned her head. When she saw Su Tong, the huge mountain of meat immediately rushed towards her. Su Tong's eyes widened and he raised his hands boldly to catch the fat girl firmly. Fortunately, he is not what he used to be, otherwise this mountain of meat would probably smash him into a meat pie. "Why are you fat again?" Su Tong weighed the fat girl's weight, which was at least 300 kilograms. I remember that when I came back last time, this girl was not so fat. I have a good appetite recently, so I eat more. Every 2 days, several people come to bring me food, thin food, fat food, and all kinds of delicious food. I am almost tired of eating it. The fat sister started acting coquettishly in Su Tong's arms. The good guy's more than 300 kilograms of fat squeezed up, almost squeezing Su Tong against the wall. He quickly pushed her away with one hand and took out a box of snacks from the prop book. Here you go, all the ones you like to eat. After seeing the snacks, the fat girl let Su Tong go and hugged the snacks in the box, her happy face with all the facial features squeezed together. Only then did Su Tong pay attention to what the fat girl had just said. You just said that many people came. The fat girl pursed her cherry lips and said with a look of disgust on her face, yeah, it's so annoying every now and then. Hearing this, Su Tong thought to himself, sure enough, we found him. Just as I had worried before, those unscrupulous killers would not come directly to Su Tong, but planned to use the people with connections around Su Tong to threaten him. But where are these people now? Now that we are here, why is old Yao still safe? This couldn't help but remind him of what his mother said to him with a cold face in the Wangchuan River, be careful, old A. So he took a deep breath and patted the fat girl on the shoulder, then you eat first, brother will go up first. The fat girl smiled and nodded, just holding the box and eating the snacks inside, not paying attention to Su Tong's appearance. However, it wasn't until Su Tong walked up the stairs that the fat girl raised her neck straight up, pressed her head against the ceiling, her eyes rolled around in circles, and then she let out a weird giggle. Brother's meat, it's getting more and more fragrant.